All right, we'll be getting started in about 10 seconds. Great. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us. I'm Devin Murphy, the mayor of the city of Pinole, and I now call the regular city council meeting of December 20th, 2022 to order. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you are able and willing, please stand up for the pledge or administer a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. I will read our land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Next on our agenda is item 3 of the agenda, roll call and city clerk report. Madam City Clerk, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Here.
Councilmember Tave.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Hello, here.
Councilmember Sasai.
Here.
City Manager Murray.
Here.
City Attorney Casher.
Here.
Deputy City Clerk Stone.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, the agenda was posted on December 15th at 4 p.m. with all legally required notices. A minor correction memo was issued related to item 9F after the publishing of the agenda. A written comment was also received. Both were distributed to staff and council, posted online, and a printed copy is provided at the back of the chambers. Does the council have any conflicts to report on any agenda items this evening? That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Next item on the agenda is closed session. Tonight, we don't have any closed session items, and that means there is no report. So we will continue moving down to item number 6, which is citizens to be heard. If the city clerk or deputy city clerk can read the instructions on citizens to be heard, and then if there are public comments, please commence.
Okay, thank you. Citizens to be heard. Citizens may speak under any item not listed on the agenda. The time limit is 3 minutes and is subject to modification by the mayor. Individuals may not share or offer time to another speaker. Pursuant to provisions of the Brown Act, no action may be taken on a matter unless it is listed on the agenda or unless certain emergency or special circumstances exist. The city council may direct staff to investigate and or schedule certain matters for consideration at a future council meeting. Please see the cover sheet of the agenda for instructions on how to submit a public comment.
Thank you. Are there any public comments for this evening?
Yes, thank you. In person, we have Rafael Menes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Rafael Menes. I'm a resident of Pinole, and I have a few topics I want to discuss tonight. First off, I'd like to note, as usual, the COVID-19 rate in Pinole. It's currently 332.2 per 100,000 over the last 14 days, which gets us to 11th place countywide, just below Hercules, but it's still a relatively elevated rate. So I would continue to encourage people to wear masks at large gatherings, indoors or outdoors, and especially while grocery shopping or in other crowded areas. Secondly, at the last council meeting, unfortunately, I wanted to make a comment in praise of our mayor, Devin Murphy, but comments weren't allowed to be made at that point in the meeting, so I'm going to make it now. So I wanted to, thank Devin for the work he's done over the past 2 years to help make the city a more engaged place for the community, particularly his work pushing for the Balancing Act and other mechanisms like that to allow the community to directly engage with city government and be better informed about what the various trade-offs are we need to make in the budgeting process and elsewhere. And also his fight for, justice and the environment and just making the city a better place for the community as a whole, not just any one group within it. So yeah, you're doing a great job, Devin. Keep doing it. And keep being willing to, let people engage and communicate and take part in meetings. That's something I bring up to all the mayors, but you get to hear it too. One topic that I heard from a member of the public who wanted to remain anonymous was a suggestion that a member of city staff make the comments about COVID-19 just to help the community keep track of it or that information be broadcast on the PCTV channel as it apparently was earlier in the pandemic. Information like graphs and so on, especially with the current triple-demic that we have with COVID, flu, and RSV, that might be worthwhile. And then finally, in conclusion, I'd like to wish everybody a happy holidays, whether you celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, the New Year, Festivus, or another holiday I'm unaware of. This is a time of celebration for many of us as we approach the end of the year and come towards the beginning of a new one. So take care, but at the same time, celebrate, that you survived, that you're part of your community, that your community is still there and helping to support you and be there, and that we're all here for the holidays. So happy holidays.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, we have Irma Report on Zoom. Ms. Report? Ms. Report, are you able to unmute yourself? We can go back to Ms. Report. It looks like we may.
Yes, if you have a yellow card, would you mind bringing it up to the dais if you'd like to speak now? Thank you so much. It looks like we don't have any more in-person speakers for this item, so let's try one more time to see if we can get Ms. Rupert on.
Ms. Report, are you able to unmute yourself? We can try to come back at the second citizens to be heard.
Great, we'll do that. That being said, just to clarify, are there any public comments?
Not for this item.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you all for that. And that does move us on to our next item on the agenda, which is reports and communications. I am happy to give and start us off and hopefully get other council members prepared. And with my mayor's report, First and foremost, I wanted to start my mayor's report off this evening by really thanking our city staff. You all are doing so much to really hold down City Hall in the final days of the year. So I just wanted to thank you all for all of what you've done in the last month around transitioning of our new council member, some of us who are transitioning on this council, but also just this service that you all have for the city of Pinole. There are a lot of residents with a who are asking for a bunch as they do deserve, and you all are really meeting the mandate of public service and your support of them. So I just wanted to uplift you and say thank you. I wanted to also say that as we continue on the rest of the holiday and with travel and transitions, that our residents, meet our staff with mutual respect and grace. We will continue as a city to deliver a high quality services for you. And that means that sometimes questions have to, staff members have to come together to answer questions for you. And as we continue on this next year, please let's push each other to spread some love and grace around not just the holidays, but next year. With that, I also wanted to add that there are a number of items that we did discuss, that we moved forward with. I'm going to go back to it, but we will be talking a little bit about we do have an item tonight that we will move into January, which is our proclamation. But right now, I did want to talk to you about the city staff and West Contra Costa Unified School District staff who are working on planning a parade and rally to celebrate the wins of our Pinole Valley High School Spartans, especially the football team's recent accomplishment of winning a state championship. So there will be more to come around information, both a little bit before the holidays, but certainly after the holidays. And I just wanted to inform the public that we are working with the district to plan a celebration of sorts and make sure that we are celebrating our future and our now accomplishments with the Spartans and Pinole Valley High School. Number 3, I wanted to report back both to the council and to the public that I did attend and speak on a panel at the inaugural California Climate Emergency and Energy Security Summit, which was hosted by elected officials to protect America and the Clean Energy Commission earlier this month. The panel included Katie Valenzuela, the Sacramento City Council member, Andy Katz from the East Bay Municipal Utility District, as well as Eric Hood, who is the chief of the California Division of Apprenticeship Standards, Workforce Development, Labor Laws, and Prevailing Wages. There were a number of topics that were discussed at the at our upcoming board meeting in January. And then last but not least, I just wanted to give a final update that you all may have seen that our city's first mayoral update is released. As part of our citywide communications and public engagement plan, we will leverage videography to keep the public informed on what's happening in City Hall. You can access the video on the social media sites of the city, which are at City of Pinole. You can also access the videos on my personal social media pages, Mayor Devin T. Murphy. And again, I ask the public to please spread the word. This is one of many tactics to get our public more engaged and our residents understanding of what's happening here in our city. And we want you to be a part of it. So again, thank you to Pinole Community Television, City Manager Murray, as well as all of the actors who made this possible and moving forward our key objectives of our communications and our communications and public engagement plan. So that might conclude my report for tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to ask that we go back to citizens to be heard. We were able to clarify that we do have 2 in-person speakers for that item.
Sure.
Okay,
we will do that.
wonderful, wonderful. So we have Alida Alston Tour and Anu Alabode.
And then we do also have one on Zoom.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alida Alston Torre. I am the director of the God Reparations Mobilization Campaign. We are calling on you, if we can today, to support us in a proclamation for Pinole. We have spoke to many of the African-American businesses that are supporting our young people, which is a youth-led organization for the 58 counties within California. What this means, because AB 3121 appoints and the proposals that they've been having, this bill was established to have 9 appointed members, and they were in Oakland last week. Unfortunately, the problem for them is that they're not in the grassroots communities. And so we go to the barbershops and the beauty salons and even Pierre Street and receive not only information from those that have been affected, if it was racial discrimination or any other environmental, as well as housing. And so our young people have been doing the due diligence of door knocking and street by street and block by block kind of for Contra Costa, Solano County, Marin County, and other counties that we want to get to say 58 counties have been heard from. And then we plan on having the assembly where we all ask those of you that can join us in June. We provide the shirt, Got Reparations, not Got Milk, to the assembly where we will decide. They will let us know what will happen. This effort, again, is youth-led, and we do hope that you can give us a proclamation. Boots on the ground is what these youth are learning, organizing in the way that teaches them due diligence to include those voices that have not been heard. So thank you for having us tonight. And I thank you for having our young people speak next.
Good evening. My name is Anolo Akwalabode, and I am a youth organizer for God Reparation. This year, I've been working with different other youth organizers and tabling in different Black communities by going into the streets and so we can be seen in different areas. We went into Pinole and we spoke to several Black businesses. Pinole has over 300 low-income community members, and we hope to speak to them. We're also preparing to talk to Black students in the new year from Pinole High School. We went to homeless encampments and talked to people there, and they talked about their experiences and what they were hoping this reparation would give to them. We talked to youths who lived in the encampments and what their hopes were, and their hopes were to go to school and have better things than they have right now. We're hoping to get low income or unhoused communities' voices heard because their voices aren't heard a lot in the community. Please help us secure a proclamation for Pinole. Thank you. And if anyone asks any questions, I will be able to answer them. Thank you.
You all. Thank you all for coming. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, we have Cordell Hindler. Mr. Hindler, are you able to unmute yourself? We can come back to Mr. Hindler at the second citizens to be heard.
Any other public comments?
No more public comments.
Thank you so much. We will close public citizens to be heard until the end of the until our next citizens to be heard at the end of the meeting. And we'll go back to item 7, reports and communications. I did conclude my mayor report, but I'll ask, are there any questions from council members? If not, we'll move forward to mayoral and council appointments. There are none this evening, and then we'll go to city council committee reports and communications. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Good evening. A week and a half ago, I attended via Zoom the Wildlife Prevention Working Group meeting, and that's where we're discussing whether or not we should enter into an MOU with other East Bay jurisdictions to work on getting grants, doing vegetation management, different prevention measures. And this effort has been funded through a grant that's gone through the Oakland Fire Safe Council, which was established after the 91 Oakland Hills fire. That group has collected about $135,000 in funding from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, the Donner Family Fund, PG&E, neighborhood organizations, and many others. They have exhausted all of their funds, and they estimate that they need about $35,000 more to bring them to conclusion. They estimate that conclusion would happen in probably in September with a memorandum of understanding, which has been underway. And what they're asking for is the jurisdictions to step up and help fund that. There have been some discussions that perhaps if the different jurisdictions, if it were split evenly, then perhaps $3,500 would be requested. However, I just received an email where that makes a lot more sense, where the request is really split by population. The ask from Alameda and Contra Costa County is $7,500 each. Oakland, $6,000, Berkeley, $6,000, Richmond, $3,500, Moraga, Orinda Fire District, $3,500, and they're asking for $1,000 from Pinole. So I have communicated that to our city manager and our fire chief. I believe that's within the spending limits, and whether or not they determine whether there's a budget line item that would cover that. That's something that they may do. They'll review it. So that's the end of my report. Other than we did not have Westcat meeting this week, and hopefully Council Member Martinez Rubin might have some updates on the Stuffa bus.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Tom. Councilor Tate?
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I was able to attend the Wickham Board meeting. That's our JPA for waste management. We received a interesting presentation that a company called Raven that does hydrogen harvesting off of landfills. And so it was a great presentation. I think they presented to MCE as well because of the hydrogen fleets that are coming out. We don't have the infrastructure in hydrogen to actually have fueling stations. So This is one way to do that on a small scale that can grow after that. It also helps reduce the amount of carbon and greenhouse gases that we're putting into the environment. So it was a great presentation. I have a little bit more to talk about, but about the fee going up, but that's in I believe our consent calendar. So I'd be pulling that just to ask Director Mishra to kind of elaborate a little bit about the fees and make sure that we go on record with that there is a fee increase. The drivers are AB 939, but we'll get into that on consent. But yeah, this opens up a possibility for hydrogen fleets for the trash trucks or the waste trucks. So it was really exciting. They're still going through a lot of the permitting process with Richmond, which is one of the because we're dealing with gases and we're dealing with landfills, there's a lot of regulations on top of that. But the report was well received. I think that colleagues on the board were asking very good questions as to, the total life cycle of these gases when waste goes in to the landfill and how that's split up. I just noticed I'm trying to talk to everybody, but so the possibilities there are great for West County. So this would be a hydrogen generator for us, which is huge. So wanted to share that. I think the tree lighting, we attended that. That was exciting. Kids loved it. Great turnout. Santa was there. It was awesome. But yeah, just looking forward to the holidays and wishing everybody happy holidays.
Thank you, Councilor Tave. Councilor Sasai.
None for me just yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And Councilor Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. I have been out of town, so I did not attend any meetings and I don't have news about the SEPA bus other than it did happen. So I'm sure both here at the next board meeting in January. I do want to wish everyone happy, safe and healthy holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, etc. And looking forward to seeing you all and perhaps more present in council chambers with us in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez-Rubin. And just so you both know, we have a presentation coming up from Westcat in January. So hopefully we'll all be able to celebrate that event and ask some critical questions there as well. So thank you all for your reports. Are there any public comments on items 7A through 7C?
No, there are no public comments.
All right, so we'll go to item 7D, which is council requests for future agenda items. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
I have none.
Thank you. Councilor Tate.
So one thing that I wanted to just express is there was a few things from the community about the dog park fencing. And I'm wondering if staff can address that. I don't know if that's something that's already been addressed, but there was a concern that the 3-foot fence wasn't big enough for some of the larger dogs. They wanted a 4-foot fence, and I believe it's a cyclone fence, so this isn't too difficult, but some of the bigger dogs are playing roughly with the smaller dogs. I'm not a dog owner, so I don't know, but I would imagine that, if an animal's twice the weight of another animal, that's gonna cause some damage. So that was something that I heard from the community that I'd like us to, I don't know if it needs to be agendized, but I know it's wrapped into the park master plan, but if that's something the city can look into it addressing. The other one was a while back, I want to say a couple years ago, and Councilmember Martinez-Rubin, I think, was mayor at the time. We talked about a job fair. I believe it was around there. My memory serves me correct, but I'd like to see the city explore maybe doing a February or March job fair. I know that after speaking with some of the trades and, we have that ad hoc committee, there's a lot of companies that are looking for labor. And I think that we can have a pretty successful job fair if we host it here in Pinole, but that's something I'd like staff to look into and eventually have a discussion about. So I'll bring back to council for funding and whatnot if that needs to happen.
Great, thank you, Counselor Tave. I just want to get clarification. Your first item was around building or extending the dog park fence. Are you requesting that for a future agenda item, or would you like a memo from staff that?
Maybe that's a memo. I just want to see that addressed and at some point publicly, maybe we could just do that in reports. But I'm not sure what all is going to go into that.
Sure.
If it's a lot more complicated, if it's taking away from the park master plan and there's a requirement for funding or whatnot to do that, I'd like to see that happen as soon as possible. That's
Great.
primarily why I would ask for it to be an agenda item, but
All right, City Manager Murray, does it sound feasible to have a memo? Or should we, would you recommend that be an item on the agenda?
Thank you for the question, and I apologize. I'm not able to share video. I'm on the location with limited bandwidth, but we could certainly prepare a memo. There have been some questions that staff have received from members of the public about possibly establishing 2 separate play areas at the dog park so that owners of smaller dogs who might feel threatened by larger dogs could use a dedicated area. That's kind of a bigger question. It's probably appropriate for the park master plan, but city staff could certainly prepare information in a memo that we send to council on the issue of the fencing and some immediate options.
Thank you. And with that additional context, with that, just to clarify, would you like an agenda item or would you like?
yeah, as long as the memo has a solution to that fence. I mean, it was pretty clear from the people that I heard from that they wanted to go from 3 feet to 4 feet.
Fantastic.
I don't know the difference between 4 feet and 5 feet, right?
Yep.
And I know if we raise it to 4 feet, somebody's going to say raise it to 5 feet, but just in a professional opinion that the dogs can't get into the other areas. So there's 2 separate areas. As long as there's a solution in that memo and the city's taking action, I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. And your second item is in regards to a job fair. Are you wanting that to be an agenda item?
Yes, I
Fantastic.
think we should talk about that and what that looks like.
Is there consensus from the council to add that as a future agenda item? Great, thank you. Any other items, Councilor Tate?
That's all.
Thank you. Councilor Sasai?
Yes, I'd be interested in putting forward discussion about a mayoral and city council internship program, gauging the community's interest, as well as seeing how we can pursue that.
Great. Is there consensus on this item?
Can I just get clarity on what that was? I didn't hear everything.
Yes, it's a internship program for high school students for a mayor and city council.
Great. I don't see any dissent. Sounds wonderful. Great. Thank you. Councilor Sasai, excuse me. Are there any other items you have?
None for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to hear from staff, and I'm not sure which format would be best, but to have us know, given that there have been some questions from some members of the public about a schedule for striping or freshening up areas in town where striping it needs to be improved, brighter, more visible. And I'm thinking about dividing the roads and as well curb painting may or may not be related or connected. However, we can get that information and also the public know if indeed the city has a schedule that it attends to, whether that be within a year, every 2 years, every 3 years, whatever that is. So so people know if that is coming due, if it's going to happen, or perhaps we need to talk about it as a capital improvement project.
Great, thank you. I do know that the CIP prioritization process is coming in the new year. I'll ask our city manager, you think that would be best as a memo or perhaps a future agenda item?
I think we need staff comment on what would be best. I don't know.
I said our city manager. Murray.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think either would be fine. So I think we're indifferent. I think that we would be happy to prepare an informational memo to council on the current practice regarding the recurring and preventative work on the striping and the curb painting. And if we provided that informational memo, that could feed into a conversation we'll be having in the spring with related to the CIP. So I think a memo that predates the discussion of the CIP would be a good approach.
Great. Thank you so much. Is that sufficient, Counselor Martinez Rubin?
Sure.
Thank you. Any other agenda items? that you have?
Yes, April will be here before we know it. So I'd like to make sure that we will have an Earth Day week proclamation. And towards that as well, have involvement of the relevant classes or students at Pinole Valley High School who can help us out with a photography project to show through photography, sort of like photo documentation of where we are in Pinole with regard to beautification and or perhaps where we can be, provided that the public and essentially the public does its share to contribute toward beautification of the city.
Great. I would go to the city clerk to just confirm. I believe we have a proclamation around Earth Day and Earth Month in our list of
I think
proclamations.
we do, and the one that we're going to bring forward for approval.
Thank you. Yeah. And just so the council's aware, we're going to bring forward a list of 2023 proclamations for next year in January. So we'll be able to add input if you all have anything. I think we have a pretty thorough list, but we'll have that for the council's approval just so that we can start thinking ahead of those things and plan out our year adequately. To the second point, which was it seemed to be around engagement partnerships with our youth groups at Pinole Valley High School. Is that a future council agenda item, or are you looking for staff just to?
I would want staff to explore a bit and as to how we can partner specifically with the photography class at Pinole Valley High School to open up our city hall and have displays of photographic work that would
Okay.
document efforts being done here in Pinole related to beautification.
Great. Okay. Is there consensus on that item? Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. I'm wondering if some of these can be referred to the Community Services Commission, if it might make sense to, have the coordination done through that group, or should it come from the council?
I don't think it'll take a lot of coordination with the council, but if there is someone who would be coordinating, I'm willing to do that. And I don't think it requires involvement of the commission.
Great. So perhaps we continue the conversation in your engagement, and then we leave it for the item that needs to be an agenda. Does that sound good? Great. Thank you. I don't have
So-
any council.
Sorry, if I may, just to
Yes, City
clarify,
Manager Murray.
it sounds like a future agenda item to discuss the city's activities for Earth Day, including possibly working with students at Pinole Valley High School for a photo exhibit. It's not clear to me whether that's work students are already planning to undertake or not. And I imagine that along with that idea, there might be other ideas from council members on things to do to celebrate Earth Day. So to my ear, if I understood correctly, it sounds like a future agenda item prior to Earth Day to talk about what the city's activities in recognition of Earth Day are going to entail. Is that correct?
That sounds great. It sounds like I think we all are in consensus on that. Wonderful. Thank
Okay,
you, City
thank
Manager
you.
Murray. Great. Well, I don't have Councilor Martinez Rubin. do you
That's
have
it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any future agenda items or requests for future agenda items. So I'll move on to our city manager report 7E and department staff. City Manager Murray,
Thank
please
you.
go ahead.
Yes, thank you. As was mentioned, we had a wonderful winter celebration with holiday tree lighting. We're going to see a short video containing some visual highlights of that. We also had a very successful Shop with a Cop event at Target last week, in which charitable donations were used to provide some gifts to families in need from the community. So strong effort from the police department and their community engagement team, as well as contributions from other city departments. That's great. And just want to provide a quick preview on agenda items coming up at our next meeting. Our regularly scheduled meeting, of course, would normally take place on the first Tuesday of the month. That's January 3rd, and it's been Pinole's tradition to cancel that first meeting. And so we will not hold that meeting. Our first meeting of the new year will be on January 17th. And as was mentioned, we'll have a presentation from Westcat, so we can all be brought up to date on how they're doing as they come out of some of the social distancing orders. We will be recognizing our police officer and firefighter of the year, which is something that city employees, peers in the police department, fire department do. And then those employees are recognized by community organizations, including by the Rotary at its Crab Feed will be coming up in February. We're expecting to have on the agenda of January 17th, the approval of the contract with the vendor to create the active transportation plan. I know that's something many members of the community have been looking forward to seeing get underway. The housing element will be considered by the city council for approval at that meeting on January 17th. We will be reviewing the city's emergency declaration and considering the actions that other levels of government have taken regarding their COVID emergency declarations to consider whether we want to continue ours or end it and what the implications are. And then as social distancing and various controls around COVID are relaxed, it feels like an appropriate time for the city council to consider its meeting format. As you know, we've been meeting in a hybrid format for some time that I think has been very effective, but we want direction from the city council on whether to continue with that format or consider alternatives. In addition, it could be an appropriate time to consider the seating and seating arrangement in the council chambers and at the dais. We'll be discussing that at that meeting on January 17th. We'll also have a couple other items, so it'll be a busy meeting, but a lot of important business. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Murray. I just wanted to ask 2 questions about the upcoming, because our next meeting is on January 17th. If you can announce the upcoming dates of the workshop that's outdoor for Community Corner. And I believe there's an early workshop for the climate action and adaptation plan coming up. If you can just inform the public about those 2 dates, that would be helpful.
I don't have those dates at my fingertips. I'll need to get back to you later in the meeting.
All right, we'll circle back. Thank you. The next item is 7F. Oh, actually, are there questions from the council? No? Okay. Our next item is 7F, City Attorney Report. City Attorney Cashier, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Just wanted to wish everyone a happy holidays and a happy and prosperous new year. I want to echo your sentiments and thanks for city staff and all the department heads. At the end of the year, it's just a time of reflection. And I just wanted to express my, kind of appreciation for everyone to have the opportunity to work with. Feel like we've done a lot this year, and it's been great to kind of be able to do that. Looking forward to next year in January, we have our Municipal Code Update Subcommittee, which will be convening our first meeting in January. We have our council assignment, so it's nice to see that we'll have some continuity on that. We do have a few ordinances that will be coming forward that I just wanted to preview briefly. We have updates to our code enforcement ordinance. We've got our staff Lily and Sarah Patton been working closely with our office to bring forward some updates to really improve our code enforcement process and some of the timing and procedures around that. We're going to be bringing forward a single-use plastics ordinance, so kind of creating some restrictions here in the city around single-use plastics. This was something that was directed from the city council. It was also a recommendation of the Friends of Pinole Creek Watershed. So this is something that our staff has been working on for quite some time. There's been a lot of efforts going on in the background around community engagement, but that ordinance will be coming forward soon. And then we also had a directive from the city council to provide some updates and recommendations on election signs in our sign ordinance. So that'll be another topic and item that will be discussed by our subcommittee. So we'll have a busy coming subcommittee calendar and agenda moving forward. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. That being said, I'm going to ask if there are any public comments for items 7A through 7F.
There are no public comments.
Great, thank you. City Manager Murray, did you want to, is this too early, too soon to circle back for 7E, those two dates?
Yeah, I'll mention that the date of the workshop for our community meeting related to community corner visioning is going to be February 4th. And I'll get back to you with information on the date of the community meeting for the climate action plan.
And actually, Mayor, I can hop in and support here. I believe we have it scheduled for 6 to 8 on January 26th. That's a Thursday
And that is
for the climate action and adaptation plan.
thank you. And that's here, correct, in chambers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just would like to augment what city manager said. It is Pinole communitycorner.com is the website that has the details for the community corner workshop and the future dates. People should go there and provide their feedback and their ideas on that website.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Mishra. All right, so next item on the agenda is the proclamations. We were originally going to recognize Pinole Valley High School football team tonight, but we are going to defer this item to one of our first in the year of 2023. We thought it would be a great way to start off the new year, and we'll also be able to have more of the team and families there with us to celebrate. So look out for an update for that. Again, congratulations to our Spartans. That means we're going to keep moving forward to our next item, and that is item 8B, presentations. We have with us Community Services Director Jeremy Rogers to introduce the holiday tree lighting video. Director Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. As my name's Jeremy Rogers, I'm your Community Services Director. And as it's been mentioned already tonight, on September 3rd, or I'm sorry, on Saturday, December 3rd, we had our annual tree lighting. This has been going on for 20, 25 years. We couldn't find the exact date, but it's been going on for a long time and it's a staple in our community. Usually it's held at Community Corner. Public Works put a very large, beautiful Christmas tree up and decorated it. Unfortunately, the weather was not on our side. It was pouring rain, it was monsoon. So we moved inside and we moved into the senior center. We were worried that we wouldn't have many people there because of the weather. It was a huge turnout. Many of you guys attended. Thank you very much for coming and supporting the community. We had about 300 participants and Santa and Mrs. Claus were there. That was a very successful event, and PCTV staff put together a video to showcase what went on that day. And so I will turn it over to Dave. Dave, could you please play that video?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vincent Sarip, Mayor of the City of Pinole, and I would like to welcome you again for this beautiful Christmas lighting event that the city has had for the last 25 years. Ang Pasko Ice Month. Guys, everybody. Thank you.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for attending, and community services wishes everyone safe and happy holidays.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
I just have a question. I saw on next door, somebody had asked the question about isn't the tree lit up when they go by? And I hadn't noticed that there have been any outages, and I'm just curious if there have been.
I have not been made aware, but we will definitely check that out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ateef.
I think I don't know if we mentioned, but the high school was involved, the Interact Club, I think was involved in as well as the choirs. So were there any other clubs that we should probably recognize as well?
The Interact Club, they did an amazing job helping put this on. The Pinole Valley High School Choir, the band was going to participate, but that was also the same day as the football championship game. So they took that over us.
And they won, right?
They did.
Great.
Spartans.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilor Desai.
Yes, just wanted to take a quick moment to thank Dave Snell, Director Rogers, and any of our city staff that played a part in coordinating and adapting to the weather challenges that day. We had a great turnout. I was there, fortunate to be there as well. So also wanted to thank our Interact Club, all the student leaders at Pinole Valley High School. I know they were there until the morning, until the evening to make this possible. So just want to express my gratitude for that. So.
Thank you. Councilor Martinez Rubin.
I got to be there for a bit toward the end, and a couple of heartwarming things. One, you mentioned the Interact Club. So what I saw, and I wish I'd been captured on video. It was toward the closing of the event, that the space that was there and the atmosphere that was there created an opportunity for the youth just to improvise and sing a song. They sang a song together. And I turned to Dave Snell and said, it goes to show when we can provide some nice, clean, fun opportunities for youth, they will take them. So it's really heartwarming because they are at the point in their life where, want their independence and yet, gathering together and finding some friendship and camaraderie to join in the festivities. So that was nice to see. I want to especially thank Chamber of Commerce and Executive Director Sylvia Villa-Serrano for providing the opportunity to increase literacy. There was a book giveaway, and however they collected over time to gather as many books as they did and give them away as gifts to children. I especially appreciate that, to instill in the youth the value, still, of being able to hold a book and appreciate its content and learn something. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. And again, phenomenal job to your entire department and Director Rogers. It's great to have you here, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Any public comments on this item?
Yes, Cordell Hindler.
Can you hear me, Roxanne?
Yes, go ahead.
So good evening, Mayor Murphy, council members. I am Cordell Handler, Richmond. So thank you. So I really enjoyed I didn't attend the holiday lighting this time due to another engagement at the same time. So I really commend the Community Services Department for their work on it. But I was going to say, point of order, I didn't get a chance to speak on 7D for future agendas. So if it's possible, we can get back to that. that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hindler. I thought we had given opportunity for public comment on that item. If you would like for, here's what we'll do. If you would like for us to go back, we can, and we'll open up item 7D for future agenda items, if there are no other public comments for this item.
Yeah.
No, there were no more public comments for this item. Go ahead, Mr. Hindler.
Yeah, so good evening again, Mayor Murphy, council members. I have some future agenda requests to bring to you all. So comment, and since we're talking about proclamations, February is Black History Month. So I'm thinking that a proclamation for African Americans that have done in our history, it's very important because we're trying to teach our students, like, you know, about what Black History Month is all about. So that's one item. And then number two, another proclamation idea is, like, you know, since March is known as International Women's Month, I figured a proclamation, you know, like how the women in history have done impacted our society. That's two. And then number three is, as I recall correctly, the reason that I had suggested to invite Danny Wan to speak to you all is because the Port of Oakland is a revenue generator, because they're getting out of the pandemic, you know, in a slowly manner. So I'm hoping that at some point we would have Mr. Wan come speak to you all about the Port of Oakland and what their plans are, you know, like regarding, like, you know, to generate more revenue. So those are my future agenda requests to bring to you all. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hindler. We will close public comment on item 7D. And I think the community would be happy to know that those two proclamations are slated for next year. And if I can get clarity from the city clerk or the city manager around the presentation to the Port of from the Port of Oakland, I think that was also a future item, but we will get back to you on that, Mr. Hindler. Thank you. That being said, that concludes, again, item 7D. We are currently back at item 8B. I think we close that item unless other council members have comments or questions. I see none, so we'll continue to move forward. And that means next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any public comments on the consent calendar?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In person, we have Rafael Menez. He has a comment for item 9H and 9I.
Thank you.
Greetings again. So my comments on 9H and 9I are relatively brief. For 9H, it looks like the offer that RJM made was for 200,000, and the counter offer that the city staff is recommending the council accept is for $150,000 with a contingency of $50,000. How likely is it that that's going to ultimately end up just being $200,000 just by a slightly different phrasing? In other words, how likely is it that that contingency is going to be used based on staff's best estimate? Now, with regards to 9I, I noticed that the cost of the newly licensed pool maintenance services technician, Shipley Pools, is roughly 4 times as high as the current licensed technician, though that doesn't account for city staff time that was required to basically backfill failure of services by the current licensed technician. So I was wondering what the cost was of staff time to do that backfilling. And those are my questions for 9H and 9I. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can we are those answers that the city staff is prepared to provide tonight?
Yes, I believe so. Director Rogers, do you want to respond to the question regarding the total budget for the park master plan?
Yes, the entire budget for the Parks Master Plan is not to exceed 150,000. That's the number that we have for that.
including the contingency, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
And Director Mishra, can you comment on the contract amount for Shipley Pools?
Yes. So the current contractor for maintaining the swimming pool is not a licensed person. We have used his services for a while, and we have noticed that there has been failures in actually completing some of the service requirements, and we have been actually cited by the health department for our swimming pool. And that kind of this is the whole process of RFP was actually based on that lack of proper maintenance and actually spending a bunch of time, staff time for that swimming pool maintenance. And we actually, when put the RFP out, we have received 3 proposals, including Blue Lagoon Service, who has the current contract, but he could not provide the licensing that we required. The other 2 providers had the similar cost, within $500 worth of cost for providing appropriate maintenance services. Our Public Works Manager, Joe, if he's online, he can provide additional details if we need it. But the cost, we inquired around with other cities with the single pools services, and the cost is pretty comparable for what we obtained the RFP.
Thank you, Director Mishra. I think that is sufficient as an answer. And if folks have other questions, they can email you or the city manager.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That being said, are there any other public comments on this item?
No, there are no more public comments.
Does the council have any items to be pulled, or may I have a motion for approval?
I'd like to pull D and F.
Okay, D and F.
I have a question related to item H.
Item H, got it. And Councilor Sasai, did you want to pull an item?
None for me.
Okay, thank you. So I see that we're pulling items D, F, H. So D, F, and H, great. So what I'll do is I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the rest, and
I'll move approval of 9A, B, C, E, G, and I.
Great. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
That is a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Toms and a second by Councilor Sasai. Any discussion? If the city clerk can do a roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Councilmember Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll start with item 9D, approve the 2023 Council Committee Assignment List. This is adopting a resolution per staff recommendation. And I believe Councilor Tave, you pulled this item.
Yeah, it's in regards to the WICTAC committee. I'd like to put myself as the primary. And that would be my motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
This is WICTAC.
Is this WICTAC?
That's correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
I will second.
Okay. Any
Discussion.
I was just gonna ask. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Tom. Did you have a comment? or question?
Just a question right now. Councilmember Martinez Rubin is the primary and the alternate is Sasai.
Yes.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yes, and I would like to continue
Councilor
staying. Oh, sorry, part of
I
discussion.
was gonna, yes, I was gonna recognize you, Councilor.
Yes, thank you.
Martinez Rubin.
Yes, and I would absolutely like to stay on as delegate. Yeah, on WICTAC and as a matter of continuity, it takes about a year to get a sense of what is going on in a committee. And actually any opportunity for input as a consequence of our participation really goes on to this following year. So I would want to stay on there rather than having Pinole represented the new. As one else.
Right. Any other comments, questions, or discussion? All right. Well, there is a motion on the table and there's a second, so I'll ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Sasai.
Can I please get some clarity on the motion?
Oh, the motion is by Councilmember Tave that he would be the main delegate for the WICTAC committee and that the alternate would remain Sasai as decided at the last.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
No,
Councilmember Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
No.
and Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, so that is 3 yeses, motion carries.
Right. Were there any other items, other motions or discussion around item 9D?
yes, I would like to move that I be part of the ad hoc committee, municipal code ad hoc committee, along with Councilmember Thomas.
Gotcha. Is there a second to that motion? All right, not seeing or hearing one. I will keep us moving on this item. Thank you for your motion, Councilor Martinez Rubin. Any other item, discussion around item 9D?
I'm wondering
Mayor
if,
Pro Tem Thomas.
yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if for WICTAC, if Councilmember Martinez Rubin could be the alternate, since there is that experience there.
Are you asking me or are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion.
Thank you.
There's interest.
So is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on that item? All right, not seeing any. So there is a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, a second by Councilor Martinez Rubin. I'll ask that the city clerk do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Sasai,
No.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
Yes,
Councilmember Tave,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
and Mayor Murphy.
No.
Okay, motion fails. And then Mayor, just as a point of order, if there aren't any additional changes for this item, we still need a motion to adopt the resolution.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that those who pulled this item have the opportunity to make motions or to have additional discussion.
I have one,
Councilor
Yes.
Sasai, yes.
yes. I would like to be one of the 2 delegates for the West Cat board after more thought consideration. I've spoken personally with the other 2 delegates, Orban Hercules, John Bailey, and Tiffany Grimsley, around their experiences with the West Cat board. And after our conversations, I feel very confident I would bring value to the conversation, bring in new ideas from the public, especially as it in regards to equity and accessibility. And also as it comes to when it comes to multimodal transportation, developing a San Pablo Avenue regional plan. Those are all things that are part of my policy focuses. And those are all things I perform outreach personally with people with Pinole to get their ideas and concepts. So that's my motion, to be one of the 2 delegates for this board.
Okay, for the record, can you clarify your motion? I heard a lot there, but I do want to make sure the city clerk gets
Yes.
the motion.
And if I could just add, currently we have listed from the last meeting, the 2 delegates are Martinez Rubin and Toms with an alternate Murphy.
Thank you for the clarity, City Clerk Bell.
I will make a motion to be one of 2 delegates for the West Cat board.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
That being said, there's a motion on the table in the second. I see there may be comments or questions. So Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
I recalled that Mayor was willing to give up the alternate seat at the last meeting. And there wasn't interest in taking the alternate seat. I'm wondering if that would be an alternate motion to take the alternate seat.
Yes, Councilor Sasai.
My motion is to take one of the delegate seats. I have consulted with some of my mentors when it comes to these regional boards, and I feel that number one, I'm qualified to be on this board as a delegate, and also being a delegate on this board ensures that we have equal, I guess, responsibility for for the workload of being on these different boards that are up for that are up to be taken by the council members here.
And just if I can clarify, which one of the delegate positions?
I do not have a preference.
Okay, because I think we need to decide that as well. Currently, I'm serving as the vice chair of that committee. Councilmember Martinez Rubin has been the past chair. So I think we need clarity on that.
Counselor Sasai, if you can just remind us what the motion was and be specific, that would probably be helpful for the conversation. And then I don't know if Counselor Martinez Rubin had a comment, but I'll go to her after you clarify your motion.
Just for clarity, is it okay to make a motion to be one of two delegates and not specify which seat would be taken?
I think it would be easier for you to identify a specific motion of council assignment so that everyone in the public and as well as our city staff and clerk can confirm the motion for future. Thank you.
Yes, I think if you were to just say which of the delegates you'd like to replace, either Martinez Rubin or Tom's within your motion, that would be helpful.
Okay, I will make a motion to be a delegate on the West Cat board for Councilor Martinez Rubin's seat.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the table. City Clerk Bill, is that clear? Okay, gotcha. And I want to go back to discussion and questions that perhaps folks may have. So Councilor Martinez Rubin, it's okay.
Well, I'm willing to serve on the West Cat board. I've been interested. I've been serving on it for, oh goodness, a couple of years now. You know, when we talk about qualifications, I feel similarly that the interests that you have expressed to the public are interests that could be shared by any one of us on the West Cat board as representatives of Pinole. I think also that your interest in wanting to see certain things accomplished in the next at least 2 years are personal interests certainly, and you want to have something to say back to the people who you talk to, and particularly your mentors. But it doesn't work that way. It's not a matter of a desire to do certain kind of project when you have a board that is responsive to a regional body for which you still have to obtain some experience. And I believe perhaps you are going to be somehow involved with ABAG or where you can also have a sense of the kind of background that is necessary to have in order to provide some substantive comments on the West Cat board. So I'd like to continue serving on that board.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, that being said, we'll go to a roll call vote from the city clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
No.
Councilmember Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
No.
and Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right, that being said, oh, yes, Mayor Pro Tem
Can
Toms.
I
you have a-
make a motion that Councilmember Martinez Rubin be the alternate for that board since you weren't interested at the last meeting?
Sure. I do. I thought Councilor Martinez Rubin, I thought you mentioned that 2 years ago that you were interested in transitioning out of the board of West Cat after your chair. I thought you were chair of West Cat and then you mentioned it at meetings.
There was an opportunity there to switch over to you, I think, because you were interested in it, right? No, I'm interested in I think it's important to have some continuity, especially when relationships have been developed over time and we meet so infrequent.
Sure.
So I'd like to remain on as much as possible. Now, council member Sasai talked about equal balance of experiences or so on committees. So as far as I know, I will have freer mornings and freer evenings now. I will not be serving on any committees. And if you choose to serve on as many as you'd like, go for it. I'm happy to serve behind the scenes however I can. But back to this matter of being on the West Cat board
I think that's what we were
as
referring to.
alternate. Sure, I'm counting, however, that you be in attendance as much as possible,
I usually attend them. I would
or
like to-
anyone, whoever is, whoever is.
I think Mayor Pro Tem
attendance.
Toms was making a motion around my
Yeah,
alternate
I
seat.
made the motion because I think at the last meeting, you were interested in offering that to someone else if there was interest.
I would like to stay on the board if that's okay. Yeah.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Any other motions or questions, comments? Great. Well, that being said, this is still an item on the agenda 9D. We do need a motion for the approval of the 2023 council committee assignment list.
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Best wishes.
Okay. Any other discussion, comments? No. City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin,
Sure.
Councilmember Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
and Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to item 9F, approval of solid waste collection rates effective January 1st, 2023. I believe Councilor Tave, you pulled this item.
Right, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to kind of daylight some of the changes that are happening since this is a fee raise by our service provider, and being that this is a JPA and a regional move, I wanted to make sure that rather than being on consent, that we give Director Mishra and me as the board or the board member to just highlight some of the issues that were in there for the record. So there is going to be a fee hike, and it's driven mostly by the AB 939, which is a escalator to encourage cities in the state to separate waste, which adds cost to operations. There's also 13.6% profit that our Republic Service can have per our agreement. And so I just wanted to highlight some of those things, and maybe Director Mishra, you can kind of go into a little bit about the why. We have the 4 bullet points that are there. And if you could speak a little bit to AB 939 and also the service size and the rates that are going up. I mean, right now it looks like there's 20 gallon is 18 cents per the agreement, and 100 gallon is 89 cents. That's going to be going. Reason I'm saying this is, January 1st is when these rates kick in, so that's like in a week or two. So I just want to make sure that we kind of daylight some of this stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Tabe. I just want to clarify, the rate increase is not really for the 939, it is actually for the 1383 regulations. AB 939 rates are fixed, that has not changed by this increase this round. Excuse me. So the details in the staff report, actually, if you look at the tables that I have provided at the end of it, that actually shows clearly which rates and which particular, there are several components to the total rate structure. So there's a collection component, there is a city's waste fund component, and one more is the 939 stays the same. And those are the increases that has been reflected in those tables. And for each of the particular gallon sizes, the rates also increase of the rates also specified in those tables. And that the collection rate increase proposed by Republic Services was also verified by our consultant R3, who reviewed the data provided by them compared with other cities around us, and they recommended also those rates. It varies from about 2.7 to 2.71% for all the different size of the containers there.
And so the new the old rate in 2022, and I apologize, that 939 is actually 1383. So for the small 35 gallon, it's $40.63 per your table. The new rate would be $41.73.
Correct,
So,
increase of $1.10.
yeah, it's a small amount, but however, there is an increased rate for the larger one. It looks like the 95 gallon, I guess, just to kind of give some scale, is $105.43. And then the new rate is $108.27. So I just wanted the public to be aware and make sure that we highlight those increases. Also, Republic Services is seeing a net increase in franchise fee revenues. Correct me if I'm wrong. Go ahead, Derek, make sure you can speak to
Yeah,
this better than I.
Just that was the correction notice I actually sent.
Right,
That increase in franchise fee over $10,600 over the period of 1 year would be for the city.
for the city. That's
That's not
correct.
for Republic Service. Republic Services will make more than that.
Right, and that's part of our
Franchise agreement.
joint power. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight that, Mr. Mayor, and then if there's any questions or comments for the council, thanks.
Any questions from council members on this item?
Thank you,
please, yeah.
Director Mishra.
Welcome.
Thank you, Director Mishra. Any questions or comments from council members on this item?
But I'll move approval of the item.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. If there's no questions or comments, we will go straight to a roll call vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yes.
Councilmember Tave.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes,
Motion carries.
great. That brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is 9H. And that is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan contract. I believe Counselor Tave pulled this item.
I was Councilmember Society. I didn't pull it.
I have a question on it.
Okay. Someone pulled this item. Thank
Mhm,
you,
yes.
Counselor Martinez Rubin, please.
Thank you. I wanted to ask staff, if the two areas that I know of, one of them, and correct me here if I'm wrong, calling it Heritage Park, it's the area behind the Faria House. If that area, geographic area, as well as the area where the eucalyptus trees are near Pinole Grove Senior Housing, would be part of the documentation that would be provided to the consultant that's going to be preparing the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as part of the existing documents related to whatever land is available, considered a park or recreation area.
Yes, that will be included in that. We can include whatever we want to in that, and that will be a part of this master plan.
Thank you. Just wanted to, that confirmed. I'm sure that one way or another through the needs assessment, there will be opportunities for members of the public to also raise that, but I wanted to know from staff whether they are indeed designated as park areas, those two that I mentioned.
Absolutely, yes. Those are places for people to recreate, open spaces, parks, so that will be included.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Kind of
Counselor
sparked a
Tate?
question for me. The Pinole Garden, we talked about having a community garden. Is that also going to be implemented or included in this study?
Yes, we will include that as well.
So there'll be some case studies that we can look at and a general idea of what that would, or where, I guess, the ideal space would be.
Right, that recommendation would be included in that. And then as citizens give input, you guys as well, this council being able to give input, you can give input as you see fit.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'd like to move the item.
Absolutely, Mayor Pro
Actually,
Tem.
we do have a public comment.
Thank you. Before we go to the motion, we'll go to our public comment. City Clerk Bell, or Deputy City.
Irma Ruport. Ms. Ruport? Ms. Ruport, are you able to unmute yourself?
So it looks like we're having trouble hearing you, Ms. Rupert. I wonder if you can try the call-in option. instead of Zoom participation. So the phone number to call in is 669-900-6833. The ID number is 893-3500-0272. It's on the face of the agenda because it looks like we're not able to hear you.
And as we await the transition, I just wanted to say, because I said it behind, but I realized it's always better to say things to the record, is Director Rogers, thank you for prioritizing this. It's been such a pleasure since you've joined on board. I know there's a lot of community services in Pinole. And I think as we think about the future of Pinole, we have found ideas and opportunities to expand that, and you have been really critical in making these things happen. But I do want to say that the Parks and Recreation Master Plan has been something that the previous council, this council, I think, is absolutely supportive of. And so thank you for driving this. Thank you for putting together both a scope of work, but identifying RJM as a real partner in this work. I know they've done tremendous work across California and perhaps the nation, as you mentioned. It is great to have and be a partner of theirs in Pinole, perhaps if this is approved. But I just wanted to say that thank you for driving this. A lot of residents in this community want to see improvement in our parks. We are good, we can be excellent. And I believe that this is the first step to doing that. So I just wanted to commend you and your team for making this happen. And we are looking forward as a council to making sure the success, execution, timeline, and scope of this project is an accomplishment of all of us as a city. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. This is very exciting times for to be able to get a Parks and Recreation Master Plan that will give us a roadmap for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So it's very exciting.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Sasai.
Yes, just a short comment and actually question for the council and staff. I understand that what was originally budgeted for the master plan contract was $100,000, and then after some, I think, negotiation we're still $50,000 over the budget, and we would have to take out from the Measure S fund. And so, I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that this is the first and only proposal that was received after issuing our RFP. So I'm not certain if that gives our city enough opportunity to find the most cost-effective or even efficient contracts. So I just wanted to bring this conversation. If the council had any thoughts on this, Director Rogers, if you have any thoughts on that as well.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, I'll jump in here. I've been in this profession for over 20 years, and I've done several master plans throughout my career, and they are expensive. I was not here when 100 was put in. 100 is not enough to do a master plan. The cheapest one I've ever done in my career was done in 2006, and that was 150,000 then. So working with RJM, we were able to negotiate. And yes, it is more than budgeted. But if you guys do approve this, working with RJM, they're the best. The fact that we got them, I'm very excited.
Thank you for the insight. I'm very excited that our council is pursuing this idea.
Thank you, Councilor Sasai. Councilor Tate.
And just for clarity, this was publicly announced, RFP went out. We followed all the public contracting procedures, for a project like this, considering the dollar threshold. So there was to the council, we could get confirmation that the process was followed and that the time was allotted for public bid. And then that public bid, we received, it sounds like one qualified vendor, right?
That is correct. Yes. That was done before I got here. But looking back over it, we followed the procurement process to a T.
Great. Okay.
Thank you. I'll go back to our public comment on this item. Are there any public comments?
Yes, we do have two. We'll start with the telephone caller. Last four numbers, 5748. Please identify yourself and your city of residence.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Please identify yourself and your city of residence.
My name is Anthony, longtime resident of Pinole. And I would like to ask the council, mayor, and staff, and with the $50,000 to $100,000 budgeted amount for consulting fees, I guess they're directly related to the RJM group, or does that also include any incremental staff time that's allotted with that master plan, and or has the city council, mayor, and staff looked at, you know, our own resources, that we have all these big hitters in these department heads that are making anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year, and we utilize some of their resources as well, in addition to the $50,000 to $100,000 budget, and how are we going to implement that as well moving forward? And then with budgeting in the master plan, I would like to request that the city look at the caretaker's house, since the city staff won't mention anything about what's happening at the caretaker's house there. So that can be incorporated into the public parks master plan. And with the support of the Pinole Garden Club, which I believe we have the majority of them on board with this idea, is to make sure that that's evaluated with the caretaker's house, to incorporate the Pinole Garden Club there and the History Museum in that one property, as well as incorporated as a trifecta effect with that property, a community garden, because we have close to a full acre of property there that's being unused, and it's all dilapidated and being run down and needs to be addressed like yesterday, since it's been vacant for over a year with all the tall weeds and things around there, not to mention the lighting situation needs to be repaired right now, not wait till the CIP or the master plan for parks decides to replace the light bulbs in and around that area and the dog park. And lastly, the trail behind the dog park, we'd like to also have the city council and mayor vote on dedicating that and recognizing that in a formal and proper way, to recognize and acknowledge the indigenous Ohlone Indian people, and to name that trail after the Ohlone Indian Trail on.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Director Rogers, I know there was a bunch there. I want to give you an opportunity to discuss a little bit about the staff work that your team has put together for this. I know this is a part of, this is just getting started there. So I think you maybe perhaps can speak to that. And then, well, can you speak to that first, please?
Absolutely. And so the staff hours that will go into this are not included in the 150. That's part of our day-to-day. Our job as staff in community services is to operate the day-to-day operations of the department. So that will not go into the 150. That will go to RJM to do all their community engagement, to do their assessments, and to build the plan.
Thank you. And I think some of the important parts that I also think were of interest to council members were around expanding and ensuring that we are encompassing all of our open space, all of our public facilities here as we enhance our parks and in our recreation facilities. What I heard from the commenter was around the caretaker house, the Heritage Park area, perhaps a community garden, as well as the dog park trail. And aligning some of the work that we're doing in partnership with Indigenous communities to that. So I would ask that you ensure that RJM is aware that those are of interest to not only the council, but the public as well as we go through this process.
Absolutely. And when we do start the public engagement process, we will allow citizens to come and speak their mind. So exactly what that commenter said, he will be able to do that in a public forum so that it can be documented within our plan.
Fantastic. Thank you again. Any other comments from the public?
Yes, we have another telephone caller. Last four numbers 5621. Please identify yourself and your city of residence.
Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I finally got on my phone. I apologize. I have a problem with this contract, and I'll tell you why. This contract went out and they received one proposal. I know that this design group apparently has a high reputation, apparently. However, I have concerns because on the CIP, we allocated 100,000. They wanted 200,000, and then we went 50,000 over. And 50,000 over is measure as funds, unassigned fund balance as a supplement. And we're taking it out of the unfunded funds that we have, unassigned. I don't think we need to have a budget and then we go over it without discussion with the public and what needs to be done, especially if you only got one proposal. That's not our routine. Our city has been in trouble before by receiving one proposal. It's a monopoly, in my opinion. I know that some of these recommendations and scope of work can be easily done in-house. And not all of it, I understand. This is a master project. But there's some other things that I disagree. And I'm just saying that this project we need to look at it and continue it till next month if it's not time sensitive. I don't think that this has been really evaluated and looked at. And there's quite a few questions that I have more, but I don't think that when you have a master plan and you have the CIP approved, and then you go over budget, where are we headed with this kind of process? Are we going to go over budget over everything and then by the end of next year not have any money to do anything else because we over budgeted? I don't find this fiscal responsible. So Mayor and Council, I know it needs to get done, but I do have quite a few questions more on this contract. I don't have the time to, to go over all of this, but I think we need a continuation of this contract and get some of these questions answered. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
If I may.
Yeah, City Manager
Mayor.
Murray, thank you.
So some of this happened before the procurement process. Portion of it predated the time that Director Rogers been with the city. So I wanted to provide some additional background that addresses some of the comments that have been raised. To begin with, the figures that are in the capital plan are very often, but probably usually I would say, what you would call a planning level estimate. We don't really know the cost of completing a project until we go out to bid. And so the $100,000 that had been budgeted in the CIP, we hadn't even defined the scope. All construction and planning, land use planning related costs have been escalating dramatically over the course of the past couple of years. So the fact, frankly, the $100,000 was just a penciled in amount. And we very often, unfortunately, in this economic climate, are needing to allocate additional funds to complete projects because the cost of doing them is more expensive, whether it be a professional service or a construction project. So I don't think, and the suggestion that because we are allocating additional money to complete a scope that we think is very sensible with a very well qualified firm somehow suggests that becomes a routine thing and is going to lead to financial challenges, I think is quite a leap. In this climate, and perhaps because the CIP noted that we were hoping to do it for $100,000, that was our planning level estimate. so many professional services firms as well as construction companies are super busy. And so it does, and we've talked about this in the past, it takes time for these firms to invest in the marketing to prepare a proposal. If firms believe that a city is going to spend less than is needed for a firm to do what they think is a capable and acceptable job, often they don't submit proposals. So this isn't the first time that we've had a small number of proposals when we're seeking services in a field that's very impacted. Regardless, we perform the same due diligence in reviewing this proposal as we would if we had received multiple proposals. And that is, do we think, is this a well-qualified firm? And are we getting good value for money? And in both to both of those questions from staff's review, and we had a cross-departmental team review this from community services, community development, and public works. We got a lot of different perspectives in evaluating RGM's qualifications. As Director Rogers mentioned, they are a very well-qualified firm. I frankly am happy that they're interested in working with Pinole. And we negotiated a scope that we think we declined some elements of the scope that they proposed because we didn't think they were necessary. And we agreed to some other things. We don't know their cost structure when we go out and request their services. So we think this is a good value for money, a reasonable price for a reasonable scope with a very well-qualified firm. Nothing changes if we have this conversation. If we decide that we want to, and we use all of the normal platforms, including the professional services platforms that Public Works does. So I don't have any, there's no doubt in my mind that interested and capable firms were aware of this opportunity to submit a proposal. If we go back to the drawing board, it means I don't think we're going to get a proposal from a better firm or going to get a more cost-effective proposal. It just means we go through a process again, and we've delayed the whole process for 4 years, 4 months, which frankly I don't think is sensible. To the idea of city staff doing a component of the work, yeah, that's possible for some of these things, although the city very often hires consultants because they have a deeper level of expertise and they're more efficient because they specialize in those things. Although it's true that city staff could do some of the components of the scope, it means that the city staff would be deferring other things that they're working on that are very important. So the reason that we're having a consultant, and usually when we engage a consultant, there's a sharing of work between city staff and the consultants on different components of an overall project. That's the scope conversation. We've come to an agreement, a recommended scope that we think is really sensible. So I don't think, I really, given the incredible community and council enthusiasm about moving this project forward, and staff's strong feeling that this is a very well-qualified firm and good value for money in the scope and cost, I really would recommend that the city council approve this contract and the additional appropriation so that we can move forward with this project. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, City Manager Murray. Before we move forward, I just want to make sure, are there any other public comments on this item?
Yes, we have David Ruport. Mr. Ruport, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, it looks like we're having trouble connecting to your audio, Mr. Rupert. So please do call in if you'd like to make a comment. Oh, looks like we have.
Now we have Irma
Yes.
Ruport.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Ruport, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, so I'm going to offer the phone number again. That would be 669-900-6833. And the webinar ID is 893-3500-0272. That information is on the face of our agenda, which is posted online.
Gotcha. And I just want to reiterate that this is a very important initiative. I know that we've talked about this. And again, thank you, Director Rogers, for leading on this. This is probably one of the most important things I get in via emails for 2 years being a council member, which is how do we improve our parks? How do we make sure our recreation services are enhanced? And so I want to reiterate that this is just one step. This is our first step to this work. We have a proposal. We have a phenomenal agency willing to help us and collaborate with us to make this possible as a master plan. But we do need the community. We do need residents to speak up and say, how do we execute this plan? How do we, get the right feedback? But also, who are the other partners we need to bring into this, right? This is the opportunity to do that. This is the first step our council is moving forward in order to, again, enhance our parks and enhance our public facilities. But I don't want those who are listening to only think that this is the only step. So if you are intrigued or you would like more information, please reach out to us as a council. Please reach Director Rogers as well. We are happy to answer any questions. And more importantly, we are happy to take feedback as it comes. Any public comments?
No, not at this time.
Great. So that being said, I think I did hear a motion.
I made a motion and then I'll have a comment if there's a second.
I'll second that motion. Is there a comment?
Yeah, the comment is that it takes staff time to prepare an RFP. And if this proposal were to be rejected, staff would have to spend all that more, much more time. And then we would also get a reputation out there in the consulting services realm of, consultants that maybe it's not worth my time to make a proposal to Pinole because, we're going to spend all this time and it's just going to get rejected. So I want to avoid that. I want to move forward with this proposal. I think it's very reasonable. Quarterly, we take a look at our budget and that's where we can make the adjustments for the additional 50,000 that we're looking at putting towards this contract. So I'm a yes when roll call comes.
Thank you. Councilor Tate.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, and maybe Director Rogers, how many staff do you have
Full-time staff?
full-time?
On the recreation side, we have one recreation manager and then we have 3 recreation coordinators. And then from there.
So I think it's important to say that RJM has approximately 20 to 30 employees, it looks like. They have a deeper bench to do this work. And, one of the things that when we talked about this in our strategic plan, going through COVID, there was a lot of input about parks. And there was a lot of questions surrounding parks. I just mentioned the dog park earlier. And I can say that, when I was campaigning, that was one of the things that kept coming up was, our places for recreation, renting the parks. And in the past, if you look at some of our benches, they're wood benches that, are weathered and I'm sure you hear about that too. Security elements to it. I mean, these are very important items. Like I just think back to a comment I heard from a resident about being able to visually see your children in the small kids area and not, those are the small things that to a parent, you're looking at it and thinking, God, why are these bushes here? Right. And believe me, I heard about it. I want to make sure this is done correctly. And I think this firm is more than qualified. Unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of response to the RFP, but I think Pinole this is great for us. This is in line with, I think, what the community is asking for, what the council's asked for. I know that staff would appreciate the perspective to put input as well. I think this is good for Pinole, and I just want to make sure that citizens know that if there will be time for input to help guide this. And if we're going too far, I'm expecting that as a council, as our community committees that we have, the planning commission, everybody's going to be involved to help rein this back in, including staff. And I think that this is going to be a good thing for us and a long-term thing for us. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we hear you. We hear your concerns. But I think that as the city manager mentioned, the climate out there is difficult. companies are rethinking their strategies moving forward. And to Councilmember Tom or Mayor Pro Tem Tom's comment, I just want to say I agree with you. I think that when Pinole commits for a 2-year, 3-year, 2 or 3 years ago, I believe what was about the time that we committed to this, that we follow through. And I think that's, yes, it's going to take a little bit more money, but we're expecting staff to really monitor that and make sure that the billing is appropriate for the value that we're getting back. So, is there, and maybe I could just offer this comment, that there'd be some type of reporting, as we move through this process. And we want to know way in advance if there's additional funds that are needed. But I think that a $200,000 item or 150,000, I think it was 100 and then we're at 200. I think that that's reasonable for something on this scale, considering that our parks are, I don't think this has ever been done before. I think we've just kind of played this by ear for quite some time. So it'll be good for us to kind of put a plan in place. So thank you.
Was there a question? I think you asked a question to Director Rogers. I just want to make sure to give you an opportunity to answer if that was a question.
No, it was more comment. I know that those points, the question really was, are there going to be those updates, and how far in advance can we get those updates?
Okay. Can we actually have an answer for that, Director Rogers, around reporting and updates with regards to this particular plan or the master plan development?
Yes, absolutely. I will work with City Manager Murray to update the council as this progresses. We will get started after the first of the year. I believe there is a timeline associated with this, so we will definitely make sure that you guys and the community is kept abreast of what we're doing.
Thank you. Councilor Martinez Rubin, did you have a comment?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you to staff for the work that you've done in trying to identify a consulting firm that's willing to work with us and also has the expertise to do this. In reviewing their timeline, reviewing their scope of work, reviewing the description of the different phases of the project seems reasonable to me. And I appreciate your explanations, Director Rogers, as well as city managers, fuller explanation about the process that you've undertaken to get to this point, which I think provides more than a single member's more to the public than a response to a single member's opinion about whether we ought to engage with this consulting firm or not. So I value the strength of the proposal as submitted. And I think that with your comment about how the cost has really over time since 2006, and now the cost doesn't seem that exorbitant. And also to think that this plan is going to serve us for a good, at least a decade. So I don't foresee that we're going to go into this process again in a relatively short time, and certainly not in the next 4 years that all of us are going to be on council. So thank you for your work on this. And I also noticed that there are extensive opportunities for public engagement. Your comments, Mayor Murphy, about reiterating that are very important, because although we may have some more vocal members of the public that might have certain opinions about the process, there are certainly opportunities for more members of the public to comment and provide their input and recognize the value of the work that the staff does. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin. I do want to make sure we give another opportunity for public comment on this item, just in case folks have tech issues, but I would like to move our conversation forward. So we do have a motion in a second, but I'll ask if our city clerk, if we have any public comments.
No, there are no more public comments.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other comments or questions, I'm going to just go and ask our city clerk for a roll call vote on this item.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Got it. And I just want to clarify, City Clerk Bell, did we approve item 9I?
Yes,
was
with
in
the original
We
motion.
did. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. So that concludes our work on the consent calendar tonight. Thank you for that robust discussion. And now the next item is for our public hearings. The city attorney, our first item is 10A, which is the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pinole, adding chapter 2.64 criminal background checks to the municipal code relating to access to state and federal level summary criminal history information. Our public hearing is now in session. City Attorney Casher, showtime.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff, and members of the public. Eric Casher, I am your city attorney. This evening, I'll be presenting the ordinance which proposes to add chapter 2.64 to the Pinole Municipal Code, which would authorize the city to access both state and federal level fingerprinting for criminal history and background checks for new hires, volunteers, contract employees, and then certain license applicants. And I'll go into a little more detail about each of those. Just by way of background, the California Penal Code section 11105 authorizes cities to access state and federal criminal history information for employment background checks if a local city council has given the city manager authority to obtain those records. Pre-employment background checks can assist the city in making more informed hiring decisions and can help safeguard the city and its employees and the community. While the city currently conducts state-level Department of Justice background checks for new hires only, the city police department conducts both state and federal criminal background checks for new hires. This ordinance would allow for there to be consistency throughout the city so that we're conducting both state level and federal criminal background checks for all employees. And just to give you a sense of the difference, so for a state level check, it's going to cover crimes that are committed locally here in the city, as well as crimes that are prosecuted by the state attorney general. A federal background check would cover any federal crimes that are committed, as well as crimes that are committed in all 49 other states. So it's a much more kind of involved check than is currently being performed. Under the ordinance, the city council would authorize both a state and federal background check for new hires, volunteers, and contract employees. And then following a background check pursuant to the language of the ordinance, the city would not hire anyone whose background check reveals a felony conviction or a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude. So felony convictions, we're talking about homicide, battery, they're usually violent criminal offenses. A misdemeanor of moral turpitude, we're talking about fraud or misrepresentation. So it really goes to like the honesty and candor of the individual. So those are the types of crimes, if you will, in convictions that we would be looking to and that would be somewhat disqualifying. But nonetheless, the ordinance does provide an opportunity for any applicant who has been disqualified as a result of a fingerprint check, give them an opportunity to essentially challenge that determination, clear the record, and provide any information to kind of mitigate what the circumstances. There may be some circumstances where the crime, for example, has nothing to do with the type of employment that they would be undertaking with the city. And so there would be that opportunity for a kind of appeal, if you will, of that final determination. And that would be kind of evaluated at the staff level at the time of hiring. So there is that opportunity as well. The attached ordinance that is included in the staff report was reviewed by the Municipal Code Update Subcommittee. And there was some feedback offered in the form of the ordinance that appears before you today was approved by the subcommittee without revision. And that concludes my report. I believe the Human Resources Director, Stacy Bell, is available to answer any questions along with me if you have any questions in regards to the ordinance or the subcommittee review and discussion of that.
Sure. I will, before moving to the council questions, I was just going to give an opportunity for Director Shell to speak to this item if you'd like.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate that. I didn't have any additional comments. Attorney Casher covered everything very well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you both for your presentation. Council, do you have any questions? Councilor Martinez-Rubin, you first.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, City Attorney Casher. I was curious as to why we don't include elected officials as part of that, the group of people who would be also required or would also be whose backgrounds we would also be able to obtain, not we, but whoever HR, whoever it is that does that for us.
It's a good question. You all are elected by the public. So I know there's a process through which that you undergo in order to submit, papers to qualify to be placed on the ballot. I'm not sure to what extent there are background checks as a part of that. So that's something that can be taken up at that point. But once the public elects you all as our representatives, that matter is concluded. So we wouldn't be able to, I mean, we could conduct a criminal background check, but it wouldn't be dispositive in any way. We wouldn't be, the city wouldn't be in a position to essentially remove a council member based on that, who's been duly elected by the members of the public, because it's really their right to elect the representatives.
I thought that would be the, the answer, that it is the public that elects it. I've always found it curious that that be the case, and it wouldn't be found until afterward, should there be some sort of background that mars the reputation of the council, and or it's the city that such an elected person would have represented, which we have had in the past year. You know, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin. Mayor Pro Tem Toms, did you have any questions?
No comments, no questions.
All right, Councilor Tate, thank you.
I wanted to ask just briefly if you could explain like if the timelines, right? So if somebody does something that they're 15 years old and they're 22 trying to get a job, does this would that come up in their background? And if it did, how much of a bearing does that have on employment, or is it just felony can't hire? Does this process take into consideration that, you know, if the person was a minor, I guess is the question I'm asking.
So that's a good question. I don't know how far back the criminal, so at what point a criminal record gets expunged from your record. I don't, but what I would say is that the ordinance does provide that kind of appeal process. So if there was an individual who comes to the city and applies for a job and they're, 30 years old, and they have on their criminal record a felony conviction from when they were 15, I would hope, and we would likely have the conversation with that individual about, things that they've done in the time to kind of, they probably served time, I would imagine, to, account for that, and they've kind of paid their debt to society. And so there would be that level of conversation around that. And that's what that section of the ordinance provides for. So even though that felony, it might be on the record, it's not dispositive in a sense that that we wouldn't be able to hire that individual if there were what we would call mitigating circumstances. And I would think that if a crime was committed when somebody was 15 and they're now, much older, that would be a mitigating circumstance.
Okay, so there is, and after reading this, there is those sections that would be, because I know that happens a lot, and just wondering whether or not like there's that I guess exception, and it sounds like the city would take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I'll go a step further. I think it's a really important point, and I think we obviously want to be in a position where we're trying to create opportunities for individuals, even formerly incarcerated individuals. There are programs out there that do offer records expungement and things like that. Those are the types of things that we can offer as resources to applicants if we see something on their record, and that's something that we could offer to them as feedback, but then also as a resource for something that could help them along the way for further opportunities and employment and the like. So it's a point well taken.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilor Tave. Councilor Society, do you have any questions?
No questions, just quick comments. First off, I'm in support of this ordinance. I think it should have been in place long ago, but also thanking City Attorney Casher for his work on this, particularly bringing up our current hiring practices as part of the conversation. I think that formerly incarcerated folks are oftentimes in great need of opportunities, whether it be volunteer opportunities or job opportunities. And so I think we should be working towards that. I'm glad to see there's some discretion with the city in terms of how we approach those certain situations that Councilor Tate brought up. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Sasai. I do have a few questions. I just wanted to, because I think you, City Attorney Casher, I think you mentioned it, but I just wanted to make sure that we were aligned in what you said. So this current ordinance is for folks who are, will impact folks who are applying for positions with the city of Pinole, and give a background check to them prior to their extension of an offer. Is that correct?
That's correct. So this, the background check process would be a part of the new hire. So we would receive an employment application as part of the kind of vetting process of new hires. We would run this check and Yeah, so would be meant while we're vetting an applicant in the application.
Okay, so with our current state law is, how does that align with our current state law? Because I know this is I'm more familiar with the conversation at the federal level. I think the National Defense Authorization Act provided a Fair Chance Act within it, which allows or prohibits federal agencies to essentially request people's criminal, discriminate, if you will, people's criminal history. Is that the same? Is that aligned also with the state, and does that align us with the city?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So this particular ordinance, all it really provides for is that if the city elects to or chooses to, then it has the authority from the city council to request a criminal background check. The California Penal Code section under which this arises, it basically states that a city like our HR director couldn't even request a criminal background check unless the city council provides for authority. So, so that's what this provides. Now, the practice of actually, requesting a criminal background check is a practical matter that I will inform and consult with the human resources director when this is being done for certain new hires. If there's a question, there are certain types of misdemeanor offenses, as you know, there's efforts to decriminalize certain types. And so those couldn't be disqualifying under certain areas of law. So we'd make sure that it's all in compliance. I'm not aware of any prohibitions on restricting employment based on felony convictions. I know that there's some process around offering expungement and opportunities and things like that, but we'll make sure that anytime that we're running a criminal background check, it's in compliance with any and all state laws and otherwise. But this provides us with the ability to do it.
Okay, gotcha. And I just wanted to clarify for the record, I think the National Defense Authorization Act is for federal agencies only. I'm not too sure if it is relevant to agencies that receive federal funding, which it also is alignment, but I think in the next, because this is our first reading, it'll come back to the council in January, correct?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
so perhaps we can just get that clarity, because I just want to make sure we are aligned, and thank you for your work on that.
Yeah.
I did want to, is there someone, City Manager Murray, is that you?
Yes, sorry for the interruption. I
No
was
worries.
hoping to add a little additional information on the topic, if I may.
Sure, please.
Director Shell can confirm this. I believe that California state law currently prohibits a employer from not extending an offer of employment based on past criminal history without having an appeal process and without there being a relevant nexus between the offense and the job duties. So there are some protections in state law. And I just want to talk about the practical inspiration, I think, for this change in the municipal code. And it's really not to cast a wider net for what I think we would all collectively consider to be less serious offenses. Our primary concern and desire to have this in place is that we want to make sure that we're checking not just California state criminal records, but other states and federal criminal records for really serious offenses. And so we don't have a process right now for our background checks to cover those other states and federal offenses. And so again, we're not really, and I can tell you without revealing anything, confidential from a personnel perspective, that we have made hires in the city's history of employees who have had past criminal convictions where they were not significant, or a significant amount of time had passed, or the offense was not directly related to an employee's job duties. I can assure you that it's mine and Director Shell's, and I think all of our appointing authorities desire to provide candidates with all sorts of different backgrounds and types of experience with career opportunities at the city, because we think having a diversity of perspectives can improve our overall organizational performance, but also because it's an incredibly competitive job market, and to just be able to find excellent people to do all of the various tasks that are required to run the city requires that we invite people with all sorts of different backgrounds. Of course, for liability reasons and the desire to run an effective organization, we wouldn't make any hiring decisions where we thought a criminal background disqualified someone because of the nature of the offense. But we've certainly considered and offered employment to people who have had past criminal convictions, again, when it was so long ago or not related to their assignments or not very significant. So that's our active practice. We're not trying to make it any harder for people who have had less serious offenses to become employees of the city of Pinole, but we do want to make sure we're completely aware of anybody who has had really significant offenses, even if they're in other states. Just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. All right, that was my last question. So we'll head over to public comment if we have any online or in person.
We do. Thank you. In person, we have Rafael Menes.
Thank you. So I have a few questions related to this item. I'm relieved by the city manager's comment that it's primarily intended to focus on serious felonies and misdemeanors of moral turpitude and not intended to catch relatively minor misdemeanors or felonies, like say possession of a nunchuck was until January 1st of this year. But I do have, I guess, a few points of concern. First off, it looks like for employment purposes here is noted to include employment, volunteer licensing, and certification duties. So it wouldn't just apply to hiring of city employees, but it would also apply to requiring background checks for some volunteers. Which volunteers does this apply? For example, to people serving on city boards, or is it just for people working with tiny tots? Is it going to be a global volunteer thing? Secondly, I know there's been a movement in some cities in California to ban the box where there's a move to just discourage asking about prior felony convictions, because even if there is a process for seeking exemption due to time in the past or relevancy of the conviction or so on and so forth, that it will still discourage certain populations from applying because they'll just see on the application, do you have a felony? Yes, no. And they won't necessarily see all the, we can discuss this, maybe it was in the past, because that doesn't fit within a checkbox on a paper form. And there's also the broader question of equity. There have been, historically speaking, several felonies that have historically applied more to communities of color than they have to, well, white communities, frankly. The disparity in sentencing for, say, crack cocaine versus powder cocaine, the disparity in marijuana felony convictions, things like that have historically been a situation which, to our credit, our district attorney has worked to address through setting up expungements as state law has allowed for that. But that's still, historically speaking, have disproportionately impacted certain populations and would have equity impacts on which populations feel like they can apply. That would maybe tie into the code of ethics we're going to be discussing later on tonight. But I'll discuss that more when we get to the code of ethics proper. And finally, I'd note that sometimes crimes can be pretty broad. For example, the Migratory Bird Control Treaty Act has as a misdemeanor the possession of feathers of migratory birds, which include things like, say, a blue jay. So sometimes people might commit crimes and not be aware that they've committed them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes, we have Cordell Hindler. Mr. Hindler, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, looks like we're having trouble hearing you, Mr. Hindler. Please do use the call-in option. I think we have that information running on our live stream. And I'll do the number one more time. So it's 669-900-6833. And the ID number is 893-3500-0272. And it's up on the string right now. Thank you.
Okay, in the meantime, we'll go back to the city attorney, Casher, and with any answers to our questions and perhaps other comments.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. And I'll defer to Director Shell. And if I said Director Bell earlier, I apologize for that because I just realized that. But so as to the first question regarding volunteers, I think that's a really good question. And there are some legal requirements around the categories of volunteers that must have criminal background checks if you're working with minors and things like that. So that we obviously would do. It's somewhat discretionary regarding to what categories of volunteers we would conduct a check. I don't think it's the practice of the city, and I defer to the city manager and Director Shell regarding what other volunteers do receive a criminal background check. But I don't believe that this would allow for it, but I don't know that that's a new practice that would be undertaken. Regarding the ban the box, I think it's also a really good point. Typically, the efforts that are out there would remove the box on an application. So an applicant wouldn't have to self-identify and to disclose themselves and identify as having a felony conviction. And that would then allow their application to be reviewed and considered as opposed to having it discarded before it's even reviewed. And so that's there's a timing element to that. This would be an application comes in, we'd obviously review them. And if they're at the point where they're actually being seriously considered, that's when there would be that criminal background check as kind of a final vetting, if you will. So it's a little bit different than ban the box. This is not requiring them to self-report. This would be a kind of the city taking on a vetting process of its own later on in the process. And let's see here, no further comment on any of the questions, but I did want to make one point. There's a mention in the ordinance regarding licensees, and just so that to kind of clarify that point, it is not the city's practice to conduct criminal background checks on business license applicants or anything like that. But there may be a point, commercial cannabis is one example for where the city would not be allowed to issue a business license for some commercial cannabis enterprise without conducting a criminal background check. We obviously have an ordinance in place in Pinole where we don't allow commercial cannabis at this point. So, but if we ever did, then this would allow us to do that, and we wouldn't have to amend this ordinance in order to. But just to clarify, there isn't a practice in the city, as I understand, like to my knowledge, where we conduct a criminal background check of business licensee. This is a kind of thinking forward in case we need to at some point in the future. We have that ability under the ordinance that we would adopt today.
Thank you, City Attorney Casher. Council Member Tatum.
So I guess there's also, I wanted to mention and then maybe ask this question. There are other agencies like Department of Consumer Affairs that are issuing licenses to, like, let's say a licensed contractor that they also have to report to. So there's this layer of, I guess what I'm saying is there's other agencies that are kind of playing into as you increase in scope of work, right? Like our responsibility or responsible charge of work. So I think this is a good ordinance, but something that Mr. Menace brought up that I remember seeing on applications is that there is kind of like a paragraph in there that says that felony charges are not necessarily disqualification for the job. There are those clauses that all background checks will be reviewed by the director and staff or hiring committee. Things like that would kind of indicate to somebody who may be a potential candidate and a good candidate that gets discouraged from even applying because they may have a criminal history. And I'm just trying to make sure that in their mind, their circumstances, I mean, I was 15, right? And or whatever, right? In their mind, they may be saying, I can't apply. But if there was language in there, or if, I mean, I don't know if this is a current practice or not, maybe I should just ask that. But if there can be some type of language in there so that people do have a chance to apply and not necessarily disqualify themselves by assuming something. I don't know if that's possible, or if there is language that you're aware of like that.
I think it's a great point. I defer to Director Shell if she has a comment on just the current application kind of form and how that's presented. I think staff would also be open to input from the council. If that's something that the council feels strongly about, then that's something that we could, it's an application form, so that can be changed administratively as well. Director Shell?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Tave and City Attorney Kasher. So the city's application does not have a question on the form that asks for criminal history. So we have banned the box. We do not have that on our initial application form. So the only time in which the city becomes aware of any criminal history of an applicant is when they are the final candidate and they are selected for the position and they are actually provided with a conditional offer for the job. And then they are sent through a criminal background check at that point.
Great, thank you.
And I just wanted to add too, if we do have any convictions that are shown in their background, we are required to provide the applicant with a 5-day appeal notice. We have to specifically tell them exactly why they're being denied employment because of the specific conviction. And then they do have that 5-day appeal process to come back to us. Or we also provide them with the information of where the information came from, whether it was the Department of Justice or the FBI. And they are able to, if there was an incorrect or an inaccurate record from that agency, they're able to then appeal to that agency and come back to us. We're able to have those conversations with them before a final determination is made on their future employment with the city.
Great. Is that sufficient, Councilor Dave?
Yeah, just that kind of led to another question, but I don't want to take up too much time, but 5 days, I mean, I know our agency takes months. Like, I mean, I mean, government agencies in 5 days, I mean, is that they have that much time to respond or is it just notification?
It is the notification. It's the 5 days we provide the applicant to respond to us. We notify them that we are considering a denial of their employment and they have 5 days to then respond to us to further clarify.
Okay, so they can say, hey, we're looking, I just called the FBI and they're going to get back to me in 2 months or something like that.
That could be part of the conversation.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to ask, I mean, 5 days.
Thank you, Director Shell, and thank you, City Attorney Kasher. Are there any other questions from council members? Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. So we've been talking about employees. I'm curious about the process or practice with regard to volunteers. I think we have an opportunity to test this. If in January this goes to second hearing, when would this ordinance take effect?
So an ordinance would take effect 30 days after the second reading. So this, because we don't have a council meeting the first week of January, I think the first meeting is January 17th. And so it would be 30 days after January 17th, if this makes it to second read.
Okay, so I'm thinking about the vacancy on the Planning Commission. And for one, it seems that in practice, we have not had any background checks of applicants volunteering on the Planning Commission. However, there's an opportunity to implement that this go around, or at least for that vacancy, if we were to fill it. So I'm wondering if there have been any thoughts about what we would be doing or the timing of that. We've got a January 13th deadline, I think, by when to submit, applicants to submit, if we are fortunate enough to get anyone at all. And then after that, we would be waiting at least by around mid-February. So realistically, we're talking about, again, somehow April is sticking to my mind as a month with lots of activity into 2023 to actually have this ordinance apply if we were to put into practice obtaining background checks on those volunteers. Am I following that accurately?
I'm happy to jump in if that's okay, Mayor. I think I'll defer to Director Shell. We did have some level of conversation about how this would be applied to all of our volunteers. And I think if it was applied to a new applicant, it would also be applied to the current existing as well. So I'll defer to Director Shell to take this question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, our intent is to apply this to all of our volunteers across the board. We're in the process of developing once this ordinance is passed, then we are able to then develop a policy for our volunteers. Right now, we are not conducting any background checks on our volunteers, nor do we have an official written policy in the city for conducting our volunteer selection process.
Thank you, Director Shell. Did you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Okay, yeah. So as a follow-up then, again, thinking about that planning commission, we've got a planning commission member, 7, remind me how many? It's conceivable that based on the timing related to this process of putting an ordinance in place is going to impact that vacancy or recruitment. So conceivable that we will have at least a planning commission that would be short for a good number of months.
We do have the vacancy. We have 1 vacancy on the 7-person committee commission. So yes, now I think it would depend on what the policy, how we develop the policy and whether or not we would swear in the new appointed person and then, apply once the ordinance has taken effect. So I think there's still some questions there in terms of how we would apply the policy and how it would ultimately play out with this particular appointment. So I don't think there would be too much of a delay given the fact that I think we are planning at this point now to look to make the appointment in February, likely the 2nd meeting in February at the earliest. And then we'll have another round of appointments for this commission following pretty soon thereafter in the summer. So, but I think we'll be able to report back once we have, developed that part of the process. And again, I'll defer to Director Shell unless if she has something to add to this piece.
Thank you, Heather. No, I believe we are just looking to further develop the policy once this ordinance gets passed, and then we'll be able to actually work out the process for all of our volunteers and how this is going to apply to existing and new volunteers coming on board.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I'll be curious to read, based on your research and contemplation and reflection and everything else that you need to do as staff, where you draw the nexus of related to the Planning Commission and then as well the Community Services Commission. Hopefully we will get clear background checks on anyone who applies. Hopefully we will get applicants at all. But it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I
City
may-
Manager Murray, yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I wouldn't expect there to be any delay in appointment to a commission as a result of this. Again, the main inspiration to get this in place is so that we can make it effective immediately with employees. The issue of volunteers and commissioners is not as straightforward, and it really is going to involve us doing essentially a level of risk assessment about because there's an expense, a time expense, but also an out-of-pocket expense of conducting these background checks. And we'll really need to think in developing what our standard approach is, what the exposure is for our different types of volunteers. So for instance, if somebody is perhaps participating in Coastal Cleanup Day as a volunteer, and they may not interact with any other, individuals. I mean, it's a different risk exposure to enlisting someone as a volunteer for that event, as opposed to, as we've already discussed, volunteers that work with other people, including vulnerable populations and the like. So we really need to work out the details, but we're very anxious to get this authorization in place so we can begin immediately to use it on our employment. And then we'll have to take some time to figure out how to best apply it, most sensibly and efficiently apply it to the other classes of individuals who participate in city activities.
Thank you, City Manager Murray. Did you have any follow-up questions, Councilor Martinez-Rubin?
Not a question, but a comment based on what City Manager Murray just said. And, with this council, with some of the council members' interest in increasingly working with youth, it's particularly important then to really spend the time thinking about the background checks among volunteers. Not only would we be sponsoring events where adults are going to increasingly take a part, but as well, youth will be, they will be surrounded by youth. So we want to make sure that the
Absolutely.
atmospheres that we create or foster or somehow sponsor are safe.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council before we go to public comment again?
I think Councilor Martinez Rubin brought up a great point about how this applies to our future commissioners as well as our current commissioners. And then just a question about how this ordinance, when it does take effect, does it also impact our current staff, city staff, all of our employees?
Good question. I'll defer to Director Shell. It will be covered in the policy, but she may have some thoughts on that already.
So thank you. I do appreciate the question. So for our current employees, this is not going to have an impact. We are not going to send through our current employees through additional FBI searches. We are just going to apply the DOJ local and the FBI level for future employees moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. So we will go to public comment. Do we have any commenters on this item?
Yes, Cordell Hindler.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
So good evening, Mayor Murphy, Council. I am Cordell Handler Richmond. So I do have some information to share with you all related to this item. So I've been in conversation with the Human Resources Department in the city of Richmond, and from what I was told that they whenever they have they hire consultants like to do background checks on potential employees. I was like, I asked them and said, is it possible like for the consultants like to do a background check? And they said if it's optional for the consultants to do the background reference check. So I'm thinking that to me it sounds like a good thing, but there's another component to it. I mean, if you're working with youth, I mean, they're required for you to like do fingerprints on to send it to the DOJ, and I'm like, okay, that sounds possible. That sounds reasonable because I mean, if you're working with children, they're required to like to take fingerprints so that way they can send it out to Washington D.C. So those are the only things that I had in mind. And I will save my comments for the next item. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Handler. Any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Great. So we'll bring it back to the council. Thank you for your comments tonight on this item to the public and to the council. Any other additional comments? Great. I just want to name one. First of all, thank you, City Attorney Casher, for your work. Director Shell, thank you for your work. I don't know if I made that mistake too. Shell does rhyme with Bell, so it's a little it's easy to make that mistake, but thank you all for your work on it. And thank you again for your comments and answering some of the questions. Very encouraging and enlightening as well. So thank you. I did want to ask that perhaps in the next reading, we have a little bit more information about the appeals process. I didn't see that in the actual ordinance in terms of maybe just if we were a little bit more clear about what guardrails the appeals, someone who would like to submit an appeal should have in order to be effective. I think just thinking about some of the conversations tonight from the council and perhaps even some of the perhaps candidates that are looking to work with the city at some point, knowing that may be helpful. I'm not too sure if that should come in an update to the ordinance or the standardized policy that was mentioned. So I would like to ask that question.
Thank you for the question, Mayor Murphy. So absolutely, I'll add language to the staff report for the second reading with a little more detail about what the appeal process would look like. I'll give some thought to whether I would prefer, and I'd also defer to Director Shell. I think that would be covered in the policy, just kind of the hiring kind of personnel policy. And so I defer to her on whether or not that should be codified in the ordinance. The challenge with having it in the ordinance is it's much more rigid. If you wanted to change it, you have to come bring it back for a first and second read. So it's a policy type of decision. It's something that can be dealt with policy and procedures around that. So that would be my recommendation, but I'll confer with Director Shell and make sure that we cover that in the second reading staff report.
Great, thank you. All right, council, if there's no other comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
I think for formality, I think we may need a motion to approve the first reading, or is the motion to approve fine?
Motion to approve the staff recommendation is fine.
Wonderful, thank you. So motion by Counselor Tave, second by Counselor Martinez Rubin. Seeing no questions or comments, I'll ask the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, council, and thank you to the public. We are moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is 10B. I'll turn it right back over to City Attorney Castro to present, and this is 10B, the first reading of ordinance adding Chapter 2.62, the Code of Ethics and Conduct to the Pinole Municipal Code.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Murphy. You guys are going to get sick of my voice, but this will be
Not at
quick
all.
here. So item 10B is an ordinance adding the city's code of ethics to the Pinole Municipal Code. The city of Pinole has a code of ethics that was approved by the council in the form of a resolution back in 2007. The purpose of the code of ethics is to encourage and assure that public officials and employees aspire to meet the highest ethical standards in their conduct when executing their responsibilities and duties as public officials. The code of ethics applies to all city employees, elected and appointed officials, including the city council, commissioners, and committee members, with the exception of the city treasurer. The city treasurer was not included as someone who this applied to in the original code of ethics. As mentioned, the code of ethics has been, it was adopted in 2007. It hasn't been updated since then. And so the city council directed the municipal code update subcommittee to review the current code of ethics and to propose updates to the code of ethics. The municipal code update subcommittee reviewed the code of ethics over several meetings. The subcommittee discussed and considered several models that have been used by both cities and public agencies throughout the state in deciding on the form that is currently being presented to you and attached to the staff report as attachment A. So the notable updates to the city's prior version of the code of ethics are as follows. Number one, the new version of the code of ethics would now be codified in the city's municipal code. So no longer a resolution. This will make the code of ethics more readily available and accessible and add a level of accountability absent from the prior version. And then the second major change is that this new version would add the city treasurer as a public official who would be covered under the revised code of ethics. So that concludes my report. Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Toms and Councilmember Tabor on the subcommittee, and we had a lot of discussion about this particular ordinance. So I obviously welcome their thoughts and comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I should note also that Mayor Murphy, as Councilmember Murphy, is the one who requested this many months ago, and so this was originally a request of Mayor Murphy. But that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, City Attorney Casher. And I wanted to also say thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Toms and Councilor Tate, for your work on both our ordinances. It's not easy to go into the red lines of the work. So thank you for your time outside of the council to deal with that. I didn't say thank you. So just want to say thank you for that. Questions by council members? Any questions? Councilor Martinez Rubin.
So I understand the additions to the code, minor changes since the resolution. The question has to do with what drove the desire to have this codified?
The question goes to City Attorney Casher.
No, it goes to you because you requested it some time ago. So here we are.
Oh, well, I noticed as a new council member that there was a resolution that was to me outdated, 2007. And I saw that as, someone who wanted to really be a steward of our responsibility as council members, but also as elected and public officials, our appointments that we serve. I also served on the planning commission. I thought we should live into the update of this code. I know there were some challenges that I dealt with as a council member, and some I'd say some challenges that I dealt with as a first-time council member, and just really making sure this was at the heart of our values in Pinole. The code of ethics, that is, was at the heart of our values in Pinole. So I just wanted us to modernize it. But again, thank you so much, City Attorney Casher, for really putting in the work. I just had an intent, and there was a lot of work to do legally, and as well as the subcommittee to actually map this out. So thank you all for your work on this. I would say that I just, again, was just living as a first term council member, and that's how this came to.
Pardon me. Thank you. Of course. So as is, those challenges you experience, then you foresee that those won't be encountered by any other council member, given that we codified this?
I think so there was a couple of highlights that City Attorney Cashier, I'll go back to you about what are some of the updates to this. In addition to, of course, the resolution, there was, a couple of updates. If you can, I think knowing those would be helpful for Councilor Martinez-Rubin.
Happy to, Mayor Murphy. So the main changes really are adding the city treasurer. So the city treasurer wasn't previously covered under the code of ethics. And then just the step of codifying this in the municipal code. So keeping in mind, this was a city council resolution that was approved. It's something that is provided to new employees, just a copy of the resolution, and then also kind of city council members. So everyone's familiar with it, but sometimes resolutions are a little harder to access and find. The idea of having this as a chapter in the municipal code is something that any member of the public, elected officials, employees of those who are kind of covered by this would be able to access it more easily. And then there was also some discussion at the subcommittee level regarding accountability. If someone, for example, violated the code of ethics in the form of a resolution, it's more symbolic. It's really, we're holding everyone to these standards kind of as a community, but there wasn't really a level of accountability, because if someone violated that section of the resolution, there wasn't much that can be done. By having this codified in the municipal code, a violation, for example, of the code of ethics would rise to the level of a violation of the code. And so it could be considered a code enforcement related action. I don't foresee it really going there, but this is a different level of accountability than exists with a resolution, where it's a symbolic more than substantive.
Thank you. So, having reviewed and thought about one of the challenges with ordinances being enforcement, I'm compelled to ask as well, so we have the statement that's codified and it's more accessible to the public. There are a couple of statements on it that make me wonder about its enforcement, if at all. We would even get to that point. And I wondered if the subcommittee had discussions about this. Two items in particular, and bear with me, I'm going to try to find where the language, there's some degree of subjectivity with this, and that's what makes it difficult to, I think, enforce. Public officials, I'm reading item G under the 2.26030. Public officials shall recognize the obligation to participate fully and responsibly in matters and organizations concerned with the betterment of the life in the city of Pinole. I think about questions that have been asked before with regard to land use and standards related to that, and subjective standards versus objective standards, right? So with this one, I'm thinking, well, then are we talking about X number of meetings that somebody would attend to make certain that they are indeed participating fully and responsibly. That might be something. But then there are other items here that I'm wondering about. Public officials shall exercise our authority or their authority and prestige for the benefits of the city of Pinole and all members of the community, and never for personal or private advantage. Well, I think we rarely even have discussions about what those personal or private advantages are. So how could we get to the point of even considering whether anyone is violating this or not? It makes me wonder. There was another.
And just to keep track, we're on page 155 of 162 of the agenda packet for the record.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking through the other one. Okay. Preceding the ones I mentioned. Item C, public officials shall serve with efficiency, respect legality, and heed the commands of due diligence and morality. Again, a lot of terms that are abstract and are subjective. So when do we get to the point of, when does a council get to the point of discussing what this actually means again in practice, right? And does it serve us to do that now in advance, or now that we're beginning to work as a group of people or with a new composition of people, some of who, well, I would actually challenge you. You don't know to what extent my commandment of due diligence and morality is. Similarly, I don't know yours. So makes me wonder. So were there discussions among the subcommittee or at another point, shall we have them, to see that there is more than just a codification of this, but that there's actually some, as some would say, teeth behind this? And or does it matter to any councilman?
Thank you for your questions,
Beyond me.
Councilor Martinez Rubin. I want to, this is exactly why this is an item on the agenda, these type of questions. So thank you. I'll go to the subcommittee and perhaps you all have comments or even questions.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I know that this is time for questions. I'm wondering if we can, I know I don't have any, but I do want to have a discussion prior to the public speaking.
Okay.
I'm wondering if we can wait for the subcommittee, because a lot of what Councilmember Martinez Rubin brought up, we discussed in the committee, and we were advised by the attorney Casher to make sure that the intent is voiced during that discussion, and that it goes on record. That way we can kind of put those left and right bumpers on this, and what the intent would be behind this this ordinance.
Fantastic. So what we'll do is we'll continue council members' questions to City Attorney Casher, and then we'll go into public comment and then deliberation. So thank you. If you can hold your questions, that'd be great. Any other council members have questions for City Attorney Casher? All right, not seeing any. We'll go to the public comment. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, Cordell Hindler.
And in person, Rafael Menes.
Okay, Roxanne?
Yes, go ahead.
So, good evening, Mayor, council members. I am Cordell Handler. I'm a Richmond resident. So when I was looking at this item, I said, and I can give you my perspective on this, because before I join a commission, I have to fill out the paperwork and all that stuff, you know, just to be on a board or a commission. So it was a requirement for me to fill out the paperwork. I have read the code of ethics, and I said, oh, okay. So, and I'm being very respect the people that I'm going to be on a commission, and I respecting the other people's opinions. So I do that. So I think it's and I read the ordinance, and I'm thinking that there are some things that I'm concerned about. So I do like the ordinance. So I'll just leave that up to the council to see to get their input on this. So with that, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hindler. Any other public comments?
Rafael Menes.
So I've got a few comments questions on this item? First off, I'm somewhat curious about the time frame of applicability of the code of ethics for mayor, council, and treasurer versus boards, commissions, committees, and staff. So it says on page 154, right above the 2.26.030, so I guess it's under scope 020, that the provisions of the chapter shall apply to the mayor, members of the city council, and treasurer at all times during their term of office as elected officials of the city of Pinole. However, the provisions of this chapter shall apply to all members of the boards, commissions, committees, and staff, not only while they are acting in their official capacities or affecting the discharge of their duties. So I guess I'm curious as to why the code of ethics would in particular apply to council members / the treasurer / mayor all the time, not just when they're at official discharge, or conversely, why it wouldn't apply to staff / commissioners all the time, not just when they're performing their official duties. Secondly, if it does apply to the elected officials, I'll just use a shorthand for this, all the time, to what extent does item E, public officials shall deal with all employees, fellow officers, and members of the public without regard to political partisanship, impact political partisan roles that council members, mayor, etc., may hold outside of their public office? Like, for example, if they're an elected official within a Democratic Party or the Republican Party or whatever, would code E impact their ability to take part in that role, because they would be required to make judgments without regard to political partisanship, which you can't really do if you're acting as an officer of a partisan association. Thirdly, I guess I agree with Councilmember Martinez Rubin's concerns about the sort of vagueness of the commands of due diligence and morality. How are we defining what the commands of due diligence and morality are? I mean, due diligence at least is a somewhat defined standard, but morality just by itself is broad and vague. I'd want it to be defined more specifically, I would hope. There's more specific definitions in lots of other areas that are clearer in the code of ethics. It's just C in particular seems vague and unclear. Finally, I'm slightly concerned that point F, the equal opportunity without regard to various factors, prevents considerations of equity. For example, if you're looking, may I have some time to conclude my sentence?
Yes, you may.
If you're looking at, for example, supports for people who are pregnant, that wouldn't be something that would be able to be considered, or physical or mental disability, that sort of thing. Like equal opportunity might also imply not being able to provide special supports if needed. I'm not sure whether that's the case or not because of the whole affirmative action laws in the state constitution and so on.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Great. So we'll go back. Thank you for your public comments. We'll go back to the council for discussion. And perhaps, perhaps we go to City Attorney Cashier to answer any of the questions that you may have answers to now with regards to the public comments tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy, and thank you, Mr. Menace, for your questions. So in regards to the timing of the applicability, and I appreciate you seizing on that language there. The idea with that language is that, you know, city council members as kind of public facing representatives of the city, there's kind of a little bit of a difference between city council members and city employees, for example, in that, you know, a city employee is kind of working for the city in their 9 to 5, and then when they're on the weekend, they're no longer working for the city, whereas city council members and elected officials are kind of more representative all the time. You know, that's kind of part of the deal. So that was what that was really focusing on. It's not meant in any way to conflict with subsection C, which relates to kind of political involvement. Individual council members are, they don't kind of relinquish or seize any of their First Amendment rights, their ability to have political interests and to advocate for things. It would really be a prohibition on them doing so in their capacity as city council members, and when dealing with members of the public to not advocate as a council member for political ideologies and things like that. That's what that is meant to kind of convey. And so hopefully this discussion that's part of the discussion, is to be able to flesh some of these things out and to really understand what's meant by some of these terms. And then as to the last, there was a section, I think it was subsection C. So I agree, the language that currently appears in the ordinance is the language from 2007 that was originally adopted as the Code of Ethics. There can probably be some language improvements in that. I'll just note that in subsection C, it talks about, or there's what was the section that I referred to? I think it was F. It's really to promote and affirm kind of equal opportunity. So it wouldn't in any way prohibit the city from having considerations such as kind of pregnancy and things like that. It's really softer than that, basically. So it wouldn't be a prohibition in any way. Those were the questions that came to mind based on the public comment.
Okay, thank you, City Attorney Casher. Just for clarity, when you say item F, are you talking about, section F, are you talking about on page 155?
That's correct.
160, okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. And I saw a hand, is that Councilmember Tabe? Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, and I just want to say to Mayor Pro Tem, we spent about, I think, a couple hours talking about this during that committee. Only because these items started to come up. Some of that I'd like to share just from notes that I have. But I did want to point out, shall aspire, the term, all persons covered by this code of ethics and conduct shall aspire to meet the highest ethical standards in the conduct of their responsibility as a public official of the city of Pinole. With that statement, I think we're trying to capture that we're all human, right? We all make mistakes. We all get angry. We all say things that we probably shouldn't have said. And what this ethics code in 2007, social media was just getting started. I mean, I think everybody was coming off of MySpace, and then Facebook came on. So there's this anonymity that social media kind of falsely, I guess, provides people, and then people say how they feel. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we captured with this is that it stayed general, but at the same time gave some left and right bumpers for council to say, hey, that was kind of too far out. And we can have the discussion here on the dais, right? And then the members of the public could say, hey, that was hurtful, or that was something that probably shouldn't have been said. And I think that's the intent that we were going for this document. We don't want to infringe on public speech. We want everybody to feel comfortable to voice their affirmations or dissent, right? And say, hey, we don't like this or we like that. And I think we need to admire the fact, or really just kind of pay honor to the fact that Pinole is that town where they can have those conversations and say something that may offend somebody and really have a discussion. And I just want to make sure that this document kept that here at the dais, so we could have those discussions in a not a controlled way, but a way that's not out in the street and yelling at each other for whatever reason, right? If somebody wants 4 feet of the dog park and someone says 5, that they can come here and have a process. I wanted to also hold up this decorum sheet that we had, where there has been some need for this. I mean, in the past, staff has been berated at the dais or at the podium. We've had instances where emotions ran hot, and looking back on the videos, you start asking yourself, "God, was I really that mad?" Or, did I, and maybe an apology or something is owed, or an apology or discussion needs to happen. The other thing that we also said was that that we discussed quite at length is a perceived violation versus a flagrant violation, and what that would mean to somebody, because not everybody has the same ethics. Some people feel that First Amendment speech says I can say whatever I want, and yeah, you can say whatever you want, but should you, right? And I think that's that interpretation that's difficult to pin down. And it was hard. It was really hard to put that into language. Some other cities, Attorney Casher had given us some case studies where they're real teeth. And I mean teeth like fines and things like that we thought, wait a minute, that's discouraging people from voicing their true feelings or opinion. And so we pulled back from that a little bit when we started to look at that, saying, hey, there's got to be a middle ground that I think they were trying to achieve in 2007. Now, questioning some of these morality, there's a point of, to me, I think that's a little bit strong because that can mean anything. And to Councilmember Martinez Rubin's point, a lot of this language is very interpretive, right? And it can be interpreted any way. But we're relying on people's personal ethics, personal level of decorum, to help kind of guide that. And I think this document was just, the intent was to make sure that the council has the authority to put a left and right bumper on there. And if somebody is going to the point of insults or anything like that, because I was named in a few posts, and to me, I personally believe like that's, people say those are public comments, but I understand people are upset. They're going to say stuff on Facebook. That's not my real life. I have a real life. You know what I mean? Like, so people are going to comment on next door and all that. But I think that what we want to do is make sure that this document keeps this place safe. This place has rules, and this place has a level that we can have a discussion about something that may be embarrassing to somebody, or maybe they said something they probably shouldn't have, and kind of heal that in some type of way. You know what I mean? To be able to say, hey, this wasn't right, or this was, well, I felt like that was wrong. And I think that it's a difficult conversation because since 2007, there's been a lot of questionable comments and a lot of questionable ethics, I guess violations that we would call them. But I'm glad Pinole, and I think Pinole made every effort to talk through those and allow the process to happen. So I think that the intent wasn't to have teeth, like I think that what kind of penalties there are. I think it was more to allow this council, this dais to have that, to facilitate that discussion is how I saw this being written.
Thank you, Councilor Tave. I was gonna, please, Mayor. Pro
Yeah, I'll
Tem
just,
Tom.
it's been probably 2 months or more since we visited this. And I do recall that we did not specifically talk about what the consequences would be and what the, who is going to make the determination that, there was a violation of the ordinance. I think that what we were looking for is, again, the guardrails and some discussion, like if, if one of the council members had felt that there was a violation against them, they could talk to that person and say that, I believe that you violated the code of ethics and here's where, and whether or not there could be an apology, direct apology, that it could be resolved there. Because the fact that this would be codified, it's something I don't think anybody really wants to bring it here at the dais. It could happen, and is that the point where the council would sort of sanction somebody? I don't, again, I don't think anybody wants that. It's not identified as an outcome. I'm not sure that it needs to be, but this I think is really, a good start, good rules for any of the public officials and staff and anybody to follow.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Councilor Martinez Rubin, I know you had a few questions, but I was wondering if you also had other thoughts.
I did. So primarily we're just so I'm clear on the intent behind this and the discussions that happened at subcommittee. It seems that you were most concerned about our interactions on the dais, and that you will want to create an atmosphere that we consider to be civil. I have no problem with that. I don't anticipate it being different. Fortunately, I don't think well, you might differ on this. I was about to say, I don't think we've experienced this in the past 4 years, but again, this is an opportunity. It would be an opportunity to test that out. Okay, I just want to make sure. You see, I don't believe those negative comments or lack of civility occurs on the dais. I think it occurs external to us. And this doesn't do that. This codifying it this way doesn't address that. It presents a benchmark for us to follow. I agree with that. No problem. Sure. Let's all be nice and continue to be civil. So I think I'm left with the sense of not being completely satisfied that what you discussed and wanted to address is really going to get addressed. And I think, frankly, that we won't do it, whether it's codified or not, because there is this matter of free speech and people, members of the public, believing that they can use that as a guise to express however and whatever they want. And that's very unfortunate. Because I think we all, to some degree, have experienced that and don't have a means other than direct confrontation to call someone on that. And so, that's going to remain. So am I on target here with what your thoughts were initially about why you want to codify this, so that it essentially means to me that what we're doing here is putting onto paper and codifying, making formal what we've known all along, that elected officials are subject to a higher standard. What that higher standard is, well, we've got an attempt at describing that here. The description still, I think, falls short because there is some subjectivity. So to the extent that we can live with that, no, I suppose we do. Not offering more specific language, but maybe between now and the next reading, I could come up with something. Or maybe we all could, and I would say, let's try to, because there are I'll leave it at that. But I think I do not want to leave out the fact, and we have it in numerous public comments, that members of the public don't subscribe to this level of civility generally. And that's, again, unfortunate.
So I want to thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin. I think you make a lot of incredibly important points. And I think one of the opportunities of this even coming to the council is to have this conversation, to actually identify ways in which a code of conduct that was a 2007 resolution that really went by can actually become law into our city. And what we know is that law oftentimes changes culture, right? And so once we have a law, we have an opportunity to decide on standardized policies. We have an opportunity to express how this law could become culture in our city. Perhaps even a program around the code of ethics could be something we look to in the future, right? We can also integrate this into our programming that we already have. So there's so many opportunities that come with an addition of a new law. In that same way, we have SB 1383, which we are trying to now encourage folks to compost across California, right? That is a law. We now have to change the culture of people, including our own families, in composting, right? And learning those strategies to do it together. I do want to reiterate something that I think was missed in the initial edition of this, which is the cohesion of the city treasurer in this code of ethics, which has not been done in the past. And with our 2007 resolution, we actually didn't have the city treasurer as a part of this. And so some of the intent here is to ensure that all public officials in the city of Pinole are applying this code of ethics to their work here. Even if they're not at the dais, especially probably when they're not at the dais, but certainly when they are. So I want to say that, and I also hear that there are a couple more comments. Councilor Tate.
So decorum for city council meetings, this was a line that, when I first, I made sure I read this, right? And what that meant. You can also, through the mayor can call somebody to order, right? By codifying something like this and making sure the public is aware of it, there's a discretion of free speech, but there is also something that's called order, right? Or the order that we have and decorum. And if the mayor were to warn somebody, say, hey, please direct your comments to me, right? Which has been done in the past, where somebody or members of the public have singled people out, me being one of them, right? And at that time, to me, that's what I signed up for. I know that I'm going to get criticisms, and And I think we all are going to receive that, and that's part of our government. But when someone, this intent was that if somebody really went off the rails, in my opinion, that would be up to the mayor to call to order, and by codifying something like this, updating it and making sure that it's fresh in everybody's mind. To the mayor's point, I feel that people will start to, if they disagree with something, make sure that they go on record with it, but in a somewhat respectful manner that I think is palatable to our city. And that's what I would ask of our citizens, understanding that some people don't. And I've seen that on social media. I've seen that in various circles. People use that as a public platform that they can soapbox on and talk about, and that's a right to do so. That podium, it's their right to do so, within reason. And I think that as we start to go through this, and I'm sure as the gears turn over the second reading, we might find language that may be too stringent, or some that might be too loose. And I think that for us as electeds, the mayor's point, there was somebody that was not included in that. And I think that that's not what you're elected to do, right? And if you do get upset, if you do say something that is probably improper or past the decorum expectations, that you have the ability to come to council and say, hey, I think I went too hard here, right? Or I said something that I probably didn't mean. If I offended somebody, I can apologize, which I think this group would do. And it's something we should pride ourselves about. But there have been groups that didn't, right? There have been individuals that haven't. And I think that was the genesis, I think, of us looking at this, and making sure that we reaffirm that these are our rules. These are the things that we believe in, and make sure the public is aware of them. And if they choose to be nasty, then that's their choice, and you could be that way, or you can try to adhere to this. And I think that was the intent. Without finding people and going through a hearing and trying to determine did somebody mean this or that. I think that was a fear of ours, is that those interpretations can go down a road of months and months of trying to interpret somebody's intent, or somebody's perception. And that's why we kind of pulled back from putting teeth into this, where there would be fines if somebody were to make a comment that was offensive or something of that nature. But we also, took into consideration that among us as electeds, we do have closed session where an issue can be brought up. We do have things that we can talk about in open session as well. I see this being one of those mechanisms that we can pull the lever and say, hey, let's talk about this.
Thank you, Councilor Tate. Mayor Pro Tem Thomas, did you have a question or a comment? All right, any other questions or comments from the council? Otherwise, I would love to entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
First reading.
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion by Councilor Tave, and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Do we have any other additional public comment on this item?
No public comment.
All right, City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Martinez Rubin,
Sure.
Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, City Clerk Bell, and thank you, Council, for this conversation. Also, thank you, City Attorney Casher, for all of the work on these ordinances and the public hearings. Wonderful. So we will continue moving down our agenda for tonight. We do not have any old business tonight. So next is new business, which is item 12A, City Council Budget for Training and Membership. I will ask City Manager Murray to present this item.
Yes, thank you very much. This is an item that was requested by the City Council. As the travel and social distancing restrictions have been eased as we've been transitioning out of COVID, there are more, there's a return to kind of normalcy in trainings and meetings, conferences that are being presented for elected officials. And we had not anytime recently really closely re-examined the city council budget as council members began to think about skill building, relationship building, policy mastery trainings and conferences and memberships they might like to have. It became clear that the budget that has been established for this fiscal year probably doesn't meet that need. And so we have a somewhat fragmented budget for the city council department, by which I mean it has a lot of different individual lines. Some of the descriptions of which are pretty straightforward, others are not quite as straightforward, but it's clear that each council member essentially has $1,100 per year that they can use for participating in conferences or other trainings, participating in membership associations, things like league policy committees. And frankly, that's not enough funding, literally, it's probably not enough funding to attend a single multi-day training or conference in Southern California once you've considered registration, lodging, travel, incidentals, and the like. And it's certainly not enough to, attend more than one per year. Whereas I think it's, incredibly valuable for the city organization and the community for our council members to be able to develop high levels of skill and policy mastery. So where after the city council requested this a future agenda item, staff gave it some thought. We've included in the staff report proposal to increase the amount per council member from $1,100 per year to something like $3,500 per year, which by our back of envelope calculation would probably be adequate for a local conference per year plus one that requires flight, say maybe in Southern California, plus perhaps a membership in an association of elected officials with a particular policy emphasis, maybe membership in a league caucus or participation in one of the league's policy committees. I have encouraged council members to think about what their training desires are and membership desires are for this year, and would be happy to take whatever direction city council provides to appropriate additional funds to the city council budget for the remainder of this fiscal year. We did some research among peer jurisdictions, and it's pretty common that council members have training and membership budgets of up to around $5,000 for small cities. And I think that's very reasonable. I do think that some of our prior council members did not have as recent a practice of attending annual conferences of various associations. And it does seem to be a greater interest in participating in those things, which again, I think is a tremendous benefit to the community and city organization. So we are recommending that the city council by minute order, which means a motion, approval of a motion, appropriate additional funds in this fiscal year's budget for council members to participate in trainings and conferences and have memberships. A somewhat associated issue was raised when this agenda item was first requested, and that is a discretionary budget for city council members separate from training and memberships that city council members could spend on other appropriate city activities. That might be a contribution to a local nonprofit. It might be participating in a local events organization. That's a more complex topic, and city staff is recommending that the city council take up consideration of that issue, discretionary budget for council members separate from training and memberships as part of the budget development process for next fiscal year's budget. So again, recommending that city council approve by minute order additional appropriation for individual city council members, training and memberships, and take up the issue of other discretionary funds for council members as part of next year's budget process. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, City Manager Murray. Any questions from the council? Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Couple of comments and questions. I would just say that the first line item, Association of Bay Area Governments, for one delegate, it's just a matter of mileage. When it's not on Zoom, it's mileage, and it's really a bus pass, because the Westcat double-decker bus goes right to the meeting place. So that could be $10. And but that doesn't seem to be I don't think it should be in the category of discretionary funds. But if it's just $10, who cares? I had a question on the League of California Cities East Bay Division meetings at 600. I noticed on the list of delegates that it is the mayor and the mayor pro tem, not either or. And I'm just wondering if that is enough. If they meet every other month live. I know pre-pandemic, I thought they met every month. So I would just say, let's take a look at that, whether or not that's enough. And then definitely the League of California Cities Conference. That's not enough. That might cover plane fare and but not any other expenses. And then also thinking about the policy committees, if they're this coming year, they're going to be on Zoom, and there's one in Pomona. And with the flights getting down there, I've already looked at what the common flights are. You might get there right on time if there's no traffic with the earliest flight that goes out. So that would really mean, accommodations for one night. So I do like the idea of, by minute order of increasing the budget. I think that makes sense.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Any other questions?
No, just,
A question before, just questions now for the report, and then we'll. Go to public
yes,
comment.
just, a clarifying question. We're talking about increasing the budget through June of this year, really, right? Only, and so we'll revisit this because the same expenses are going to occur into the next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any, we'll go to public comment. City Clerk Bell or Deputy City Clerk Stone.
Thank you. We do have one in-person comment, Rafael Menes.
Evening again. My question was more related to the potential miscellaneous discretionary city purposes portion of the recommendation, but it sounds like, from what I heard of the presentation, about if the city's considering that, it would be at a later meeting. So my concerns aren't as great there. I guess there was also I guess the one other question I'd have was sort of in the travel and training category. You've got the Contra Costa County Mayor's Conference monthly dinners, $250 per person. And then you have sort of a generic various dinners / award ceremonies, and you have $100 for the entire year. And I'm not quite seeing how the price points for those two are matching up. Is there just one or two other dinners or award ceremonies that we're expecting council members to attend over the entire year? Are the mayor's conference dinners just unusually expensive compared to other dinners? Because $1,200 compared to $100 seems like a pretty major discrepancy within the category. And that's it, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes, Cordell Henler.
Can you hear me, Roxanne?
Yes, go ahead.
So good evening again, Mayor Murphy, Council. I am Cordell Henlon. I have some concerns regarding this item. So, and Rafael Menace, he brought up a good point, because when I was looking at the staff report, I was like, for the mayor's conference, it's like $50. I'm like, wait a minute, that don't look right, because it's like, because I know that the city of Richmond, they charge me $55 per person, and I'm like, I'm trying to think, where's $50? Where'd that come from? It's like, it's beyond me. So that's one concern. Then the second part is like, the traveling to a conference is like, I kind of agree with Mayor Pro Tem Thomas. Like if you're attending if you're staying at a hotel for one evening, and it's like $200 sounds like pretty cheap for just to attend a conference, and it's like you might learn something out of this conference. So for that amount of money, I think that sounds like a good investment. And then third, I was looking at the travel expenses, because even though that it has been lifted, but my concern is that getting on the plane to attend a conference, and it's like that seems pretty stretched, because for whatever the amount of money it is to cost to attend a conference, it's like that's not enough. So I agree with the city manager Murray. I'm thinking that increasing the amount would make things more easier, because $1,100 that's not enough. But I'm thinking increasing it will make it better, because that's just my concerns regarding the travel expenses, because I mean $600 that's not enough. That's it.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay, seeing no more public comments, thank you for your comments. I'll go back to the council for other comments or questions. Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
No, just I'm ready for a motion.
Councilor, thank you. Councilor Martinez Rubin.
No, I'm glad staff has taken a look at a need to update the budget for the expenses incurred by council members, considering that compensation we get has no way covers the costs associated with activities outside of council meetings.
I agree. Thank you. Councilor Tate.
I just wanted to mention that, I found extreme value in attending these conferences, and I know that my colleagues here have had that as well. I would just say that the chances of all five of us going to one event just based on schedules is usually, especially those large conferences, it costs a lot of money. A lot of times, somebody may have conflicts, family conflicts or travel conflicts. And I would just say that, if we can just make sure that we're monitoring, as we do this, we're monitoring this and understanding more of how much it costs to actually participate, considering the stipend that we receive. So I would just say that the next budget cycle, we should have a discussion around that. And I think this at least right size what we're doing now and right size what we're doing now. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Tate.
And Mayor, I'd love to, I was just going to respond to the public comment as well as council. I
City
think it might
Clerk
be
Bell, please.
helpful in looking at this budget. So I think it's important to remember this is also just our best guess of what the council will be able to do. It really depends on the schedule. So when you see amounts like $100 for awards ceremonies and $250 for other sponsored events, we've tried to define the best that we could for the public's interest of what exactly these funds are going towards. But of course, there's always going to be variation in terms of who attends what, but I support what we're doing. I think because now after coming out of COVID, there's been a lot more interest, there's a lot more training opportunities. So, but just wanted to mention that this isn't exact. It's really hard to tell what people will be available for, but it's, we've done our best to just define as well as we could for the public what these funds are going towards.
Sure. Thank you, City Clerk Bell. Counselor Sasai.
Yes, I'm glad this is being brought up, mostly because in my first 2 weeks of being in elected office, I brought up to City Clerk Bell about a conference hosted by the League of California Cities for new mayors and council members, and looking at the details of what that cost. I believe it was around $700. So that's probably around 65–70% of the $1,100 per council member that shows for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. And so past that conference, there's a good number of other conferences that are available out there to professionally develop us. And so I think the increase is justified and needed. I would even say that I've talked with council members from cities of our sizes, even this city as well, that expressed that around 5,000 per council member was a more appropriate budget. So I just want to make sure that we have an adequate budget that does not discourage council members from not seeking more trainings, or even worse, paying out of pocket for these trainings. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, great. Thank you all for this conversation. I just wanted to add a note that, our memberships, as we all know, are very important to bringing new policies, new networks, and new opportunities to the city of Pinole. So it's not just that we are, going to the conferences for our own personal development, but really this is about the work of our city and improving our city. When we talk about wanting new opportunities of apprenticeships or new folks to come to our city, we want to recruit folks. We want opportunities of even grants and really finding that funding. Those funding opportunities, we often hear about those in our ears at these conferences, at these training opportunities from other councils, right, of our sizes. And so my hope really in this conversation is that we see this as an investment, not only in ourselves, but our investment in the city of Pinole and our growth in the next 10 to 20 years. So I do want to reiterate, thank you, Councilor Martinez-Rubin, for stating that this is an amendment to the budget that goes into June. So I would love council feedback, and I think City Manager Murray as well would like council feedback on how this goes. Meaning that if you feel like we, need to increase that budget, let's talk about that in the next budget cycle. But perhaps also, clients that I've worked with have also had somewhat of a deferment policy, if you will, meaning, if you feel like you're a council member, maybe this year you can't, this next year, calendar year, perhaps you can't, attend as many conferences as you could have last year, talking with another, the city clerk or city council, city manager about making your budget go to another council member so that we can really, use this money effectively, but also plan out these things, right? It takes a lot to go to a conference. I know that very well. I think every council member here, it's not just going to the conference, it's the prep work, it's the getting business cards, it's making sure we are effective at these conferences. So I just wanted to say that and thank you, City Manager Murray, for bringing this and city staff to this council. Any other comments? All right, not seeing any, I would love to entertain a motion.
I'd like to move that we increase the budget for the remaining fiscal year 22-23 to 3,500 per council member.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
So move.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Toms and a second by Councilor Tave. Not seeing any other questions or comments, we'll go to the City Clerk Bell for a roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai,
Yes.
Martinez-Rubin, Tave,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, council, and thank you to the public as well as city staff. Next, we have our second opportunity for citizens to be heard. For anyone who didn't speak during the first one, Madam City Clerk.
Yes, we do have one, Cordell Hindler.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me, Roxanne?
Yes, go ahead.
So good evening again, Mayor Murphy, council members. I am Cordell Henley, and I have some wonderful news to share with you all. So one of the ideas that I had was I'm in full support of these meetings to continue with the hybrid meetings because it gives the public like me, the chance to express my opinion. So I'm in support of that event. And then number two, on the consent calendar regarding the assigned committee list. So it just so happens that that the West County Mayor's meeting is going to be hosted by the city of Richmond in next month. So I just want to make sure that we get clarity on that one. So, and then number three is because if you recall when the school district came about a month or so ago, when they gave their presentation regarding the shortage of teachers, it was brought to my attention from the athletic director at Salesian College Preparatory. He says that that they're about like 60 teachers short, and I'm like, that's odd. And I said, because, and the reason I say that is because the city, the school district they held a job fair back in the summer, if I'm correct, to like to retain teachers. And I'm thinking that sounds like a good thing, but it's like, but there's not enough teachers, like for the high school in a general sense. So I'm hoping that at some point that I am coming to your meeting in person at some point. So that's all I have to say, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
All right, we will close out the last citizens to be heard. Thank you so much for your public comments. We are ready to adjourn tonight, but before we do adjourn, we do have two people we want to honor as we adjourn. First of all, I want to thank Council Mayor Pro Tem Toms for recognizing this. Kathy Bradshaw, a longtime Pinole resident and wife of former council member, has recently passed, as well as Eric Adams Toms, the nephew of Council Mayor Pro Tem Toms, who worked at a flower cart in Pinole prior to a serious car accident in 2001. And I asked that Mayor Pro Tem Toms, if you'd like to add anything.
Yes, I'll add about my nephew, Eric Adami Toms, worked at the flower cart while he was a student at John Swett High School. He was in a horrific car accident on San Pablo Avenue in his senior year, and he has been disabled since that time, but he passed away last week. So I appreciate the gesture of the council adjourning in his memory. And then Kathy Bradshaw, I don't know if I'll make a note that Kathy Bradshaw has been a resident of Pinole for many, many years. I wasn't able to determine how long, but I know it's in the neighborhood of about 40 years. She raised her kids here. She was later married to Phil Bradshaw, who served on the council for many years. They had private business here in Pinole up on San Pablo Avenue. And she's been very active in the community. So I'm honored that the council would adjourn in her memory as well.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for mentioning this. And again, condolences for you. I now adjourn the meeting to the regular city council meeting of January 17th in honor of Kathy Bradshaw, Eric Adam Toms, and Adam Swartz. Thank you, everyone. Good night and happy holidays.